Sometime later, Sunny found the time to dive into the Soul Sea and take a look at the new memory he had gotten. It was a heavy round shield forged from dull, lusterless dark steel. Inside of it, visible only to him, a complex weave of ethereal strings shone with stark radiance. Sunny called up the runes, anxious to see what made the shield so special. Memory, Dusk Shard. Memory rank, Ascended. Memory tier, 2. Memory type, Weapon. His eyes slid down to the description. Memory description. Forged from a shard of a fallen star. This shield contains the weight of the heavens. Depending on the heart of its wielder, it can be as light as a feather or heavy as regret. Sunny nodded along with the runes. Just like he expected, this memory was linked to the fallen star. Memory enchantments. Indomitable. Enchantment description. Following the will of its master, the Dusk Shard can change its weight. Sunny frowned. At first glance, this enchantment seemed very unassuming. People usually thought about the weight of their weapons only when they considered how much endurance they would need to wield them. In that regard, the lighter the weapon was, the better. A light weapon could allow a person to fight longer without growing tired, which often meant the difference between victory and defeat. However, things changed when it came to the Awakened, who often possessed inhuman strength and endurance. Light weapons had their role to play, but more often than not, what you really needed was force. And the more mass something had, the more force it could produce. In the past, Sunny had only considered shields as a defensive tool, but after watching Effie and Stone Saint use them in battle, he realized that in the hands of a trained warrior, a shield could be as destructive and deadly as a sword, sometimes much more so. Just imagining Effie bashing someone with a shield that weighed a few 100 kilograms sent shivers running down his spine. Not to mention that the weight could be changed on the fly, making it light to maneuver faster, then turning it into an improvised siege ram at the right moment. But even in terms of pure defense, a shield that could be turned into a literal wall was priceless. He could see a monster such as the Spire Messenger colliding with it, and simply bouncing off in the chorus of shattering bones. Granted, Sunny never trained with a shield, and the sword he used demanded 2 hands to be wielded properly, but where there was a will, there was a way. Sunny left the Sea of Soul, finding himself once again in the dark cavern with the rest of the cohort. With a slight smile, Sunny summoned the Dusk Shard. The sparks of light appeared in a whirlwind around his arm. A few long seconds later, the silhouette of a large round shield weaved itself into reality. After a few more seconds, the memory was fully formed. Sunny's grin widened. Nice! With a surprised yelp, "Whoa!" Sunny staggered and toppled over. Luckily, he fell on top of the dull iron shield, otherwise he might have been crushed under its weight. Sunny blushed with embarrassment and thought, "Guess it's in heavy mode." The damn thing was heavier than he had ever expected. In fact, it was probably too heavy for him to even lift, let alone carry around. The members of the cohort glanced at Sunny, who was struggling to stand up. With perplexed expressions, gritting his teeth, Sunny rose to one knee and awkwardly tried to lift the shield off the ground. However, no matter how hard he tried, he only managed to drag it by a few centimeters. Sunny was becoming increasingly aware of the other's stares. He silently commanded himself to get it together. "All right, I admit it. It's too damn heavy. Let's reduce the weight a little." But a few seconds later, his face froze. He grumbled angrily, "This can't be. No way." However, the truth was hard to deny. He couldn't change the Dusk Shard's weight at all. The enchantment had stated the shield's weight could be adjusted, but it turned out that activating that ability required the wielder to actively manipulate soul essence, or in Sunny's case, shadow essence. The most powerful enchantments were all like that, and the higher a memory rank, the more probable it was for the enchantments it possessed to be really powerful. The problem was that sleepers had no way to control and manipulate their soul essence. Sunny didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What were the chances of him coming to possess not one, not two, but 3 whole ascended memories, only to find out that 2 of them were completely unusable, while the 3rd one required him to somehow become a master marksman to avoid dying from blood loss? Again, the world felt stacked against him. He grumbled internally. Damn it all, but especially damned that damned fated attribute. While Sunny was grinding his teeth in outrage, Effie approached him and glanced down from her considerable height. Then she leaned forward, took the dusk shard by the rim, and lifted it, along with Sunny, from the ground, seemingly without too much strain. That's it then? The memory you got from the pale bastard? Finally standing up with the help of the huntress, he stared at her for a long time, his expression unreadable. Then he suddenly smiled. Yes. By the way, Effie, we're friends, aren't we? See, I couldn't help but notice that your shield memory was destroyed in that last fight. How about... She rolled her eyes. Wait, don't tell me. Sunny's shady emporium is open for business again? He blinked a couple of times, then grinned. Why, yes. How did you know? The huntress glanced down at the heavy shield, squinted, and said in a cautious tone, Well, what do you want in exchange? Sunny thought for a bit. That bottomless bag of yours, and 2 other awakened memories. Before Effie could come to a decision, though, Nephis interrupted their conversation. Coming closer, she glanced at the huntress first, then at Sunny, and finally at the shield. How about giving it to Effie in exchange for another ascended memory? One more suited to your technique. Sunny dismissed the dusk shard and hesitated for a bit, looking at Changing Star with doubt. Was this her ploy to get the shard memory from him? If she had an ascended memory all this time, why had she been hiding it? And where could she have gotten one to begin with? I don't know. Show me the memory and then we'll decide. Nephis silently stepped closer and took his hand. Then a spark of energy traveled from her body to his. The spell rang in his ear. You have received a memory. Throwing a dubious glance at Nephis, Sunny summoned the runes and found the name of the memory he had received. His shadow tilted its head, surprised. Memory. Moon Shard. So, Nephis had recovered the other shard memories without him. Did she have all 3 other ones? Collectively, did their party possess all 7 parts of the fallen star? Why had Nephis been hiding this memory? And more importantly, what did it do? Sunny raised an eyebrow, eyeing Nephis cautiously. He found it hard to believe that she'd simply give him another shard memory, but Nephis was as unreadable as ever. He stared at the runes glistening above him. Memory, Moon Shard. Memory rank, Ascended. Memory tier, 1. Memory type, Weapon. Memory description. When the stars were extinguished and fell, a lonely moon remained in the empty sky. With no sun to shine upon it, the moon grew dim, withered, and died. As the last remnants of moonlight were devoured by darkness, one small shard was forged into this subtle blade. Sunny squinted, wondering why Nephis had said this memory was more suited for him. It sounded like a knife, which could be useful but wasn't specific to him by any means. Memory enchantments. Unseen. Enchantment description. Forged from moonlight, this blade appears in the hand of its wielder without delay. Sunny's pupils widened slightly. With a tense frown, he summoned the moon shard. A graceful dagger with a long and slender blade appeared in his hand. It tapered to a needle-like point and had a simple crossguard with a handle made from glossy black wood. The most striking feature of the dagger was that it was forged out of clear, misty glass. However, that glass appeared to be as strong as steel, and much sharper. In the darkness of the underground cavern, The ghostly stiletto was nearly invisible. What really stunned Sonny, though, was not its look or its rank, but the fact that the moonlight blade had appeared in his hand instantaneously. There had been no sparks of light, no process of weaving itself into existence from nothingness. The dagger was simply suddenly there, as if it had always been that way. This was an incredible enchantment. It might not have seemed that powerful, but Sonny instantly understood that there was a lot more to this simple trait than most people would assume. Once summoned, memories took time to form. The Dusk Shard had weaved itself into existence in about 6 to 8 seconds, but even if it was just a single second, like the time it took Neff's silver sword to appear, the process was still not instantaneous. What's more, the appearance of a memory was telegraphed in advance by the dancing sparks of light. In short, it was very hard to take the enemy by surprise by suddenly summoning a memory. A skilled opponent would always have enough time to notice it and react accordingly, unless they were lured into a cunning trap by a sword savant like Changing Star. But even then, it wasn't easy to plan and execute such a move. Yet all of that didn't apply to the Moon Shard. The slender blade of the ghostly dagger could appear out of nowhere in an instant and immediately strike at the target. Sonny chuckled to himself. What an insidious little thing. It was uniquely suited to Sonny's preferred method of engaging the enemy indeed. He liked to strike from the shadows and kill with one strike. With the ghostly blade in his arsenal, though, he would not even have to hide in the darkness in order to deliver an unexpected and deadly blow. No one would see it coming. Not to mention that it was an ascended memory. Armed with the Moon Shard, Sonny would finally be able to wound and kill fallen creatures, even without the miraculous enhancement of the Crown of Dawn. His own shadow would be more than enough. Granted, he would have to get up close and personal with a monster in order to use the dagger, but still, at least with it, he stood a chance. Suppressing a satisfied smile from appearing on his lips, Sonny turned to Nephis and asked in an incredulous tone, "Where did you get this thing?" She lingered for a few moments. "North of the Dark City." Sonny nodded. That made sense. There was another red cross on her map, about a week's worth of traveling time north of the ruins. It was drawn near a symbol resembling a grotesque misshapen skull. Changing Star had indeed been busy in the 3 months that he had spent hunting monsters on the dark streets of the cursed city. Now, 5 of the shard memories were accounted for: Dawn Shard, Zenith Shard, Dusk Shard, Midnight Shard, and Moon Shards. Only 2 remained. Sonny wondered which statue they were tied to, and whether someone out there already held them in their hands. It didn't matter that much for now, though. With a sigh, he dismissed the ghostly dagger. "I have to warn you that the enchantment on the shield requires an awaken to activate it. It is supposed to be able to change its weight and mass freely, but actually, it's just stuck being stupidly heavy." Nephis glanced at Effie, who just shrugged. "I'm fine with it as it is." Sonny finally allowed himself to smile. "Ah, that's great then. We have a deal." In the end, they had to spend a couple of days in the vast underground cavern. Nephis had to recover from her ghastly wound and the strain of healing the rest of the cohort. Plus, all of them weren't eager to venture back into the mist with their memories damaged. Eventually, though, they had to take the risk. Sonny used this short moment of respite to rest and practice shadow dance, slowly moving toward his goal of mastering its first step. He knew that there was nothing but bloodshed ahead of them. First, they would have to fight their way through the untold horrors of the labyrinth, and once they reached the Dark City, the last act of this messed up play would begin. Looking back, he couldn't believe how far he had come in these past 8 months. When Sonny arrived on the Forgotten Shore, he was weak and inexperienced. His first fight against a single carapace scavenger almost cost him his life. And now, here he was, standing near the corpse of a fallen monster he had killed with his own 2 hands. From barely killing a single carapace scavenger to almost losing his life in a fight against a carapace centurion, to summoning a horror of the depths and finishing off the Carapace demon, from entering the Dark City not knowing anything about it, to hunting down dozens of nightmare creatures on its cursed streets, to fighting against a horde of undead monsters in the catacombs beneath it, from venturing back into the labyrinth of his own free will and waging war against the tribe of monstrous spiders, to riding on the shoulder of an ancient giant and battling fallen abominations and hordes of awakened creatures, from finding a nameless grave in the foothills of the Hollow Mountains to witnessing the last resting place of the First Lord in their depths. He had lived through so much, endured so much, and accomplished so much. Of course, there had not been only victories. He had tasted defeat too, a lot of it, both in battle and in his tentative attempts to build human relationships with other prisoners of this desolate hell. He had experienced pain, sorrow, and despair, and he was going to taste even more of it soon. Turning his head slightly, Sonny looked at his companions. Nephis, Cassia, Kai, Effie, and Castor were busy with final preparations for their long return journey. How many of them would be alive by the end of all this? Closing his eyes, he sighed. It was not going to be easy to survive in the final push through the Forgotten Shore, but Sonny was determined to show the rest of the world what he was really made of. He was going to win. He was going to be the last one standing, no matter what he had to do. Retracing their steps would be neither quick nor easy for the cohort. Without the Colossus to ride on, they need to take a long way, battle many monsters, and venture deep into the maze of Crimson Coral. Yet they persevered, and after 3 months of grueling travel, a group of 6 battered humans appeared from the sea of Crimson Coral and approached a magnificent white arch. Moving with the precision of experienced predators, they swiftly slaughtered a few transient creatures that hid in the deep shadow cast by the ancient structure, stripped them down for meat, and swiftly climbed up. Against all odds, the cohort had survived the journey back to the Dark City, if only barely. Looking north from the top of the marble arch, Sonny saw the distant gray wall. His gaze lingered on it, full of exhaustion, triumph, and dark apprehension. Finally, they had returned. The past 3 months had been an endless bloody nightmare, with countless horrors and battles leaving their marks on him. And yet, they had also been an anvil against which he was tested, tempered, and made stronger as a result. Sonny didn't have a mirror, but was sure that his appearance changed a lot. He could tell just by looking at other members of the cohort. Changing Star's white armor was now covered by numerous scratches and tears that even the restorative effects of the Soul Sea couldn't heal. Her silver hair was longer, reaching to the middle of her back. The ivory face of their leader had grown thin, with dark circles visible under her striking burning gray eyes. Castor changed even more. The neat and dignified young scion was nowhere to be seen. Instead, a man with disheveled hair and a short, scruffy beard stood in his place, his face dark and grim. Sometimes, Sonny thought that he could even see a gray hair or two in his luscious mane. Kai was still beautiful and elegant, but most of his charm was hidden under layers and layers of dirt, dust, and dried blood. The stylish armor he had worn was now long gone, destroyed in one of the vicious battles they had fought, and replaced by a rather unflattering garment that seemed to be woven out of bluish seaweed. The archer also wielded a new bow, this one long and powerful, fashioned out of 2 curved horns that had belonged to a creature that Sonny would rather not think about. Suffice to say, this memory was one of the 5th tier and truly deadly. Effie was much the same, except for the fact that she had become even leaner, her robust musculature not covered by even a gram of fat. The huntress wielded 2 shard memories, both responsible for sending dozens upon dozens of nightmare creatures to their deaths. Her archaic bronze armor was dented all over, but somehow still held together. Cassia was the youngest of them, so the changes that had happened to her were perhaps the most pronounced. By now, She had lost most of her childish softness and had turned into a beautiful young woman who looked to be on the cusp of adulthood. She had 3 echoes tied to her core now, one given to her by Nephis, the other one by Kai. With the help of her echoes and the Dark Wing, Cassia was now able to move and participate in battles alongside the rest of the group. She had learned how to leverage her resources and skills to negate the innate disadvantage of her blindness. And then there was Sunny himself. He was perhaps even more beaten and battered than the rest of them, the puppeteer's shroud almost coming apart at the seams. His hair was long, messy, and in desperate need of a good wash. Sadly, his skin was still as pale as that of a corpse. He was also unable to grow even a bit of scruff, let alone a real beard. But, oh well, why care about the little things? Summoning the runes, Sunny found a particular cluster and glanced at it. The runes shimmered in the twilight of the approaching night. Shadow fragments, 938 out of 1,000. A dark smile appeared on his lips. Almost. In the past 3 months, Sunny had participated in countless battles. His main responsibility was that of a scout, and as such, he was not a part of the cohort's main strike force. But even then, he had faced and slain more than 100 nightmare creatures, closer to 200 in fact. Among them were beasts, monsters, as well as a few demons and even a devil or two. Sunny absorbed the remnants of their shadows and used his share of the soul shards to trade for memories with other members of the cohort. He promptly fed these battered memories to the Stone Saint, and now he was so close to reaching full saturation of his shadow core. His prowess and physique were considerably enhanced too. Somewhere along the way, Sunny's skills had exceeded those of even the most athletic non-sleeper. He was faster, stronger, and more enduring than any mundane human could ever hope to be. His shadow had grown much more potent too, since its enhancement increased proportionally to his own power. Or was it the other way around? In any case, Sunny felt that when the shadow was wrapped around his body, he was now almost at the level of an actual awakened. Very few sleepers on the Forgotten Shore could challenge him in terms of raw power. Of course, all of them had deadly aspect abilities of their own. And several of the most deadly sleepers on these wretched shores were right here with him, setting up camp and getting ready to cook him food. Sunny wasn't sure, but guessed that Effie and Castor had already fully saturated their cores. The huntress, because of the years she had spent hunting monsters on the streets of the Dark City, and the legacy, because of the soul shards his family must have provided him before his first journey into the Dream Realm. As far as Nephis's soul core, Sunny wasn't sure. Logic dictated that she should have reached the point of saturation before Sunny did, but he still saw her absorbing shards after each battle, so either she did not, or her aspect had other uses for the excess soul essence. Unless she was just putting on an expensive show. Kai and Cassia were behind him in terms of the amount of accumulated essence, which made sense. Most often the two acted as ranged fighters, providing support and cover for the cohort's heavy hitters. Their contributions were invaluable, but didn't earn them soul shards consistently. Even so, Kai and Cassia both had absorbed far more soul essence than the average resident of the Forgotten Shore. Each of them was now a powerhouse, just like the rest of the cohort. Looking at the people busying themselves with the mundane tasks of setting up the camp, Sunny inhaled deeply and smiled. He wondered if they were all as anxious as he was. Their journey back to the Dark City was almost complete. Surely, after months of anticipation, training, and preparation, he wasn't the only one itching for the clash with Gunlog to commence. Sunny's eyes fell on the horizon. Soon. Sunny and his friends truly were a sight to behold. When leaving the Dark City behind, Sunny knew how powerful the members of the cohort were. However, he had not quite realized just how well-rounded and perfectly suited they were to face the various challenges presented by the labyrinth. With Nephis, Effie, and Castor leading the charge, most nightmare creatures populating the forest of Crimson Coral had little chance to survive, not with the Crown of Dawn pouring raw power into the armor and weapons of the cohort at least. Each of the three was a deadly and versatile fighter with their own unique approach to combat and strengths that complemented each other. With the three slayers holding off the opponents while being supported by Kai from above, very few things could stand in their way. Kai himself had turned out to be an astonishingly deadly presence on the battlefield as well, with the blood arrow providing him with a conditionally endless supply of arrows. He could just stay in the air out of reach of any abominations that had no ranged attack, which turned out to be most creatures. Secure in position, the Stinger could then pick off the beasts with well-aimed shots. With the addition of the formidable hornbow, the distance at which he could hit the target had increased tremendously, allowing him to eliminate some of the enemies long before they had gotten close enough to the cohort for an effective attack. His opening salvo had made a lot of battles much less problematic. Of course, Kai couldn't fly above the labyrinth with impunity. The gray sky was full of danger too, and by separating himself from his companions, he risked being attacked and torn apart by the abominations that populated it. He had to maintain a fragile balance, but the flying nightmare creatures were a threat to the cohort whether or not the charming archer rose into the air. Actually, airborne enemies often posed the biggest threat to the group. If a beast could attack from above, there was little Nephis, Effie, or Castor could do to help. That's why Kai's ability to fly had turned out to be priceless, especially because he was usually able to fly faster, or at least maneuver better, than most of the creatures that dwelled in the sky. More than once, they had survived only because the archer was able to draw the fury of the aerial abominations and dodge their attack long enough to either fell them with a perfectly aimed arrow or give his companions a chance to reposition themselves. Sunny and Cassia usually protected the rear of the cohort to prevent anything from attacking their companions from the back, which happened more often than one would hope. With the help of the Stone Saint, the Quiet Dancer, and the blind girl's other two echoes, they were able to hold off anything until the main force was done with their share of the opponents and joined the fray. That was not to say that their role in the cohort was less important. If anything, Sunny was convinced that what they did was more vital to the survival of each member of the cohort than what the fighters were doing. It was true that with the help of the Dawn Shard, the cohort was well equipped to handle most monsters of the labyrinth. What they truly had to fear were the creatures that defied all logic, the perils that the human mind could not even comprehend, and the labyrinth itself, as well as the dark waters of the cursed sea and the ancient horrors that dwelled beneath them. That was what Sunny and Cassia had to protect the group from, the unexpected. As Sunny absorbed more and more shadow fragments, the range at which he could control his shadow grew exponentially. By now, the shadow could move almost well over half a mile ahead of the cohort, scouting for any potential threat and giving them plenty of time to decide if they wanted to fight or change course and avoid the danger entirely. If anything, the shadow had become a little willful and now preferred to wander around aimlessly and far away, returning to Sunny only when specifically commanded to do so. But regardless of that, the value of being able to see and identify their enemies in advance was impossible to overestimate. It was just too valuable. There were many nightmare creatures that lay in wait, reliant on ambushes to give them an edge in battle. Sunny's shadow scouting deprived them of that, and sometimes turned the element of surprise against them. In battle, the tiniest advantage could decide the difference between life and death, and the advantages of knowledge in the first strike were possibly the most important. However, there were things on the Forgotten Shore that even Sunny could not see, predict, or escape from. That was where Cassia's affinity for revelations and miraculous intuition came into play. She was responsible for preventing the cohort from stumbling into anything that would destroy their very souls before anyone could even understand what was happening, or something that simply could not be defeated. If not for Cassia, a sudden storm or a creature akin to the Soul Devourer, or something even more terrifying, would have ended their lives long before they reached the Dark City. But even with all that, every day in the labyrinth brought them to the very verge of death. No matter how strong, well-rounded, and well-equipped the cohort was, the nightmares of the Forgotten Shore consistently grew more powerful, unpredictable, and bizarre. making any and all preparations useless. In the end, the most crucial skill of all belonged to Nephis. Even after miraculous victories, the party was often grievously wounded, sickened, or infected. If they didn't have the benefit of Changing Star's healing flames, they'd have succumbed to their injuries long ago. In the 3 months that they had spent traveling through the labyrinth, Sunny fully understood why healers were so sought after among the awakened. He knew it before, in theory, but only after being subjected to the daily terror of their journey had he realized how life-changing, literally, the presence of a healer in the cohort truly was. And so, just like that, they had done the unthinkable and managed to travel all the way from the edges of the Forgotten Shore back to its center. Thanks to their power and resolve, their foresight, their strength, and their ability to rely on and help each other, as well as, in large part, pure dumb luck. And now that they were about to return to the cursed haven of the Dark City, their luck was about to be tested as it had never been tested before. First, the members of the cohort had to fulfill their obligation to Sunny. He had joined this expedition on a certain condition, after all. Glancing once again at the distant gray wall, Sunny clenched his fists. The corner of his mouth curled up in a vicious grin. He jeered quietly. "Wait a bit more, bastard. Your day of reckoning is coming." They were going to kill the Black Knight. Turning away from the distant wall of the Dark City, Sunny closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, and let go of his anger. He had to keep his head cool for now. Killing a fallen devil was not going to be an easy task. It might even turn out to be his undoing, but he was determined to see it done. The debt of blood he owed that creature had to be repaid, no matter what. Walking over to the campfire, Sunny sat down and tried to remember the details of their previous stay in this old, weathered marble arch. What a fun couple of days that had been. His shadow shook its head dejectedly and turned away. Soon, Nephis handed him his share of the food. Her culinary skills had not improved a lot during these months, despite the fact that there had not been a large variety of ingredients at their disposal. Still, being able to turn the most repulsive of monsters into a delicious meal was something that not everyone was capable of. Sunny laughed to himself. They need to start offering a separate culinary course at the academy. Teacher Julius had taught him how to consume various things in the dream realm without ending up poisoned to death, but he had neglected to go in depth on how to actually make them taste good. Sinking his teeth into a juicy piece of meat, Sunny forgot about his troubles for a bit and simply enjoyed this rare moment of bliss. Disposing of the meat, he smiled in satisfaction and wiped his hands on the soft fabric of the puppeteer's shroud. Then he glanced at Nephis. "We should be able to reach the city tomorrow, yes?" She gave him a nod. "If nothing unexpected happens." Sunny thought for a bit, then added in a curious tone, "Do you think Gunlog knows that we're coming back?" Nephis thought about it for a few moments before replying. Her voice was calm and indifferent. "Definitely." Sunny sighed. This was his conclusion as well. Back when he had first entered Bright Castle, he had learned from Castor about a certain artisan who could track the general location of anyone. He needed only to talk to any person they'd ever met. This was how Castor knew how many sleepers of their corps had been sent to the Forgotten Shore. Even if Gunlog possessed no other method to learn of their approach, all he had to do was ask that woman. Sunny shifted a little and smirked at Nephis. "Should we expect a welcoming party?" Changing Star shook her head. "I don't think so. There's no need for him to do anything. Gunlog knows that we will come to him of our own free will, simply because there's nowhere else for us to go." She fell silent to mull over a thought. Then she raised her voice again. "But most of all, this has never been about killing me or my people. It was always about destroying the ideas I represent. What's the point of crushing me if no one is there to see it? Gunlog won't do anything without an audience. He had sent Horus to stop us from escaping the stage, but now that we are back on it, there is no need for him to rush the inevitable." Everyone listened to the conversation with dark expressions. Sonny glanced at them, hesitated for a bit. Finally, he voiced the unspoken question.
Are you confident that you can defeat him?
Nephis stared at the fire. She answered in a strong and decisive voice. Yes. Hearing that, Sonny smiled sweetly.
Well, good for you, but I am not. So let's finish our deal before the lot of you get killed by that maniac, all right?
A corner of Neff's mouth curled upward. You are talking about the fallen devil? He nodded.
Yes, the bastard. You promised to help me kill him, remember?
Meanwhile, Kai was looking at him with a complicated expression. Finally, not able to hold back, words tumbled from his mouth. Sonny, are you really not going to join us? Don't you see that we only have one chance to escape this place? Not to mention all the lives we can save. Sonny shrugged. To be honest, he wasn't entirely sure on that point himself. On one hand, he had no desire to help Nephis achieve her insane goal. On the other hand, things that she had set in motion were going to happen with or without him. What was he going to do? Hide in his cathedral and wait until there was no one else left alive on the Forgotten Shore? Some fate that would be.
Maybe I'll join you, and maybe I won't. Who knows what will happen?
He fell silent and cast a sideways glance at Cassia. At least 3 people here knew what would happen, more or less. Sonny refocused his attention on Nephis.
That's not the point, though, is it? The point is that you should conclude your deal first, and do whatever it is you wish to do later.
Changing Star faced the 2 of them and calmly ended that conversation. Sure, no problem. We'll go to the cathedral first. A deal is a deal, after all. Sonny smiled with satisfaction. Nephis glanced at him. But Sonny, how exactly are we supposed to kill a fallen devil? His smile widened.
Oh, I'm glad that you asked.
Sonny had been making plans on how exactly to kill the Black Knight for more than half a year now. Prior to leaving the Dark City, he had spent 2 entire months observing the terrifying fiend and trying to learn everything there was to know about him. Needless to say, the task of slaying a creature that powerful was not going to be trivial. In fact, it was going to be the hardest battle they had fought yet. It almost seemed impossible, but was it really? The fight against the Spire Messenger, who had turned out to be a fallen monster, nearly cost several members of the cohort their lives. They had barely been able to hold off against the creature of its class, and a devil was 10 times more dreadful. However, there was a big difference between the messenger they had faced and the Black Knight. The difference was, basically, very simple. It was that Sonny did not hate the messenger with all his dark, vindictive heart. And now, that hate was going to tip the scales in their favor. Sonny was acutely aware that many members of the party might see this as a battle that was both incredibly dangerous and ultimately pointless. After all, taking down the Black Knight wouldn't grant them a shard memory. It wouldn't unlock any more of the Forgotten Shores lore. This battle was one to be waged simply to level a vendetta. As far as Sonny was concerned, that made it more important. He resolved to fight like never before, and if this vile bastard did manage to kill him, well, he'd use his dying breath to bring it down with him. At the core of it, things were indeed rather simple. Sonny hated the Black Knight enough to do his due diligence, and thus spent an incredible amount of time studying it. He was so motivated to kill the creature that had hurt him, that he had even gone so far as to settle in the same old cathedral as the devil. As a result, Sonny had become a singular expert on everything having to do with the Black Knight. He knew his strengths, he knew his weaknesses, the patterns of his behavior, and most importantly, he knew what type of unnatural powers the devil possessed. Unlike nightmare creatures of lower ranks, devils had access to bizarre and harrowing powers that were akin to the aspect abilities of the awakened. That was what made them so dangerous, and that was why the fact that Sonny had learned the Black Knight's power was so vital. Unlike the Spire Messenger, whom they had to fight blind, the cohort was going to go into battle with the fallen devil fully aware of what they would face. As such, they could plan, come up with strategies, and make preparations. Knowing your enemy was half the victory. The second half was knowing yourself. The smile disappeared from Sonny's face. Leaning forward, he said,
"The Black Knight is truly a living nightmare. He is as strong, fast, and indestructible as you would imagine a fallen devil to be. I've seen countless creatures fall to his sword. No matter their shape, size, rank, or class, he is just too powerful."
Effie giggled. "You're not really making your case, Sonny. You know that, right?" He glanced at her and grinned.
"That's not even the worst part. What really makes him an incarnation of death is not his astonishing might, but the darkness that lives in the grand hall of the cathedral and seems to obey him. When wrapped in that darkness, the Black Knight can move fast, unseen, and without making a single sound. His physical traits are vastly enhanced, turning him into an unstoppable engine of slaughter."
Sonny grimaced.
"What's more, any damage done to him is instantly repaired as long as he is surrounded by the darkness. Inside of it, he is basically immortal."
The members of the cohort glanced at each other with dubious expressions. Only Changing Star remained indifferent. A tentative smile appeared on Sonny's face. Turning to Nephis, he said,
"But that is where you come in, Neph. With your radiant light, that darkness will vanish. Your flames can strip the bastard of his greatest weapon. Without his dark power, the Black Knight is nothing more than a powerful abomination. He will be only slightly more dangerous than a demon of the same rank."
Castor stared at him and said, his voice flat, "You say it as though a fallen demon is an easy enemy to face." Sonny shook his head.
"No, I am not saying that. I fully understand how hard that fight will be. In fact, I understand it better than any of you. The truth of the matter is that even with the Dawn Shard, our weapons won't be able to wound him. Not because his flesh is too tough, but because he is covered in heavy armor from head to toe. I'm not even sure that there is any flesh beneath it, to be honest. There is only one chink in his armor, and that is the visor of the helmet."
The Black Knight had two burning red embers instead of eyes, so Sonny didn't even know if the bastard had a face. Kai shifted a little and said with uncertainty, "So, the only way to kill him is to hit the crack of the visor? I am not sure that is possible. On a fixed target, sure, but on a moving one, especially one that fast and deadly, I can't promise that I'll manage that." The others nodded, expressing their agreement. Sonny smiled.
Yes, that would indeed be tough. Luckily, we don't have to."
He paused for a moment and then revealed the secret that had taken him a long, long time to uncover.
"The truth is, the visor is a trap. It seems like a weak spot, but it's not. The real weakness of the Black Knight is not even protected by the armor."
A dark expression appeared on his face.
"It's his sword."
Indeed, after observing the devil for months, Sonny had come to the conclusion that the secret to destroying the damned thing hid not in finding a way to pierce the bastard's armor, but in destroying his terrifying greatsword. By watching the Black Knight fight against countless nightmare creatures, Sonny had been able to notice a curious pattern. Just like the members of the cohort, the abominations who wandered into the cathedral tended to instinctively go for the eyes of its guardian, but the bastard didn't care about those attacks at all. He did, however, tend to protect his sword against the most powerful blows, going so far as to receive them with his body instead of blocking or deflecting them with the obliterating black blade, as if wary of any damage being done to it. By focusing on this pattern, Sonny had confirmed that the sword was indeed the only thing that the fallen devil seemed to be reluctant to put in harm's way. It was his true weakness. Nephis tilted her head slightly and echoed his words. "His sword?" Sonny nodded.
"Yes, if we want to kill the Black Knight, we will have to destroy his greatsword. That is the only way."
Effie blinked a couple of times, then glared at him in outrage. "Is that what you call not being protected by the armor? Of course it's not protected by the armor.
Because it's even tougher than the armor, you doofus.
She shook her head.
How are we supposed to break a sword fit to be wielded by a fallen devil? Huh?
Sonny smiled.
Oh, you don't have to. In fact, I insist that you don't. You are there to help me, but no one can kill that bastard except for me. No one. You understand? So your task will be to hold that fiend off. Leave the sword to me.
The huntress scoffed.
That's not really an answer. If none of us is strong enough to even come close to breaking such a powerful armament, how are you going to destroy it?
Sonny stared at her for a bit, then shrugged.
I'm not going to destroy it. Do I look like someone who can destroy it? No, I don't, and I can't.
A dark grin appeared on his lips.
But the Stone Saint? I am willing to bet that she can.
She was able to slaughter 2 fallen beasts before even becoming his shadow. Not that Sonny's own shadow had grown strong with almost 1,000 fragments fueling it with power. But there were very few things in the Dark City that the Saint couldn't destroy with its help. So yes, he was willing to bet that she would be able to break the sword of the Black Knight. In fact, he was going to bet his life on it. Two days later, they entered the Dark City once again. Nephis was right. No one from the castle was there to ambush them. Gunlog seemed to be content letting them come to him instead, so his hunters and the dreadful hunchback were nowhere to be seen. Just as well, the cohort scaled the impregnable gray wall late in the evening and spent the night in one of its towers, almost like how Sonny, Nephis, and Cassia had done all that time ago. When the morning came, they headed toward the ruined cathedral. The ruined streets of the cursed city surrounded them once more. After months spent in the labyrinth, their monotone colors seemed strange and bizarre. There was nothing but dark stone and dust around, with rare islands of crimson leaves and moss growing through the rubble, and swarms of terrifying fallen creatures, of course. It was nice to be home. Sonny caught himself thinking that and blinked. He had never thought that one day he would feel sentimental about returning to this cursed ancient prison. And yet, there was a strange feeling of comfort deep in his heart now. It had been there ever since they had crested the city wall.
What weird creatures humans are. Truly, there's nothing we can't get used to.
Glancing at his companions, he noticed that they were feeling the same way, especially Effie, who had spent years surviving, hunting, and even thriving on the streets of the Dark City. She even called it a paradise once, the only kind that humans deserved. Sonny sighed. Regardless of the strange ideas the huntress had, he believed that humans weren't meant to live in a paradise. If they were ever to find one, they would quickly turn it into hell, just like what the humans trapped on the Forgotten Shore were doing right now. Soon, the ruins of the magnificent cathedral were in front of them. The members of the cohort stopped some distance away, looking at the ancient temple with dark expressions. The journey through the Dark City had turned out to be uneventful thanks to Effie's masterful guidance, and the shadow scouting ahead to help her learn of any dangers ahead of time. But the real danger hid at the end of the path, and now they had reached it. Sonny had spent the last 2 days teaching the rest of the group everything that he knew about how the Black Knight fought, what his habits were, and how they had to approach the upcoming battle. They were as ready as they were ever going to be. Turning to them, he lingered for a few moments and then said,
"Remember, I must be the one to deal the final blow. It is very important to me."
Looking at him with a complicated expression, Kai sighed. "Why are you so obsessed with killing this devil, Sonny? Won't it be better to leave that creature be? I just don't understand this whole endeavor." Sonny gritted his teeth and smiled. The look in his eyes was unnerving as he turned to Kai.
"Have you ever been gutted, Kai? And I don't mean emotionally, I mean literally, with a sharp piece of metal."
The charming archer shivered. No. Were you?" The smile disappeared from Sonny's face.
Yes, I was. That bastard over there cut me open with his big sharp sword and left me bleeding to death in a ditch. So it's only fair that I do something similar to him, is it not? I don't know how it works with you civilized folks, but out in the outskirts, you don't let things like that go. Simple as that. The day you let a person who hurt you walk free was the day you announced to the world that anyone could stomp on you with impunity. After that, it was a short road to the grave, or worse. So people in the outskirts were very serious about their grudges. Granted, the Black Knight was not really a person, but the same principle applied. At least it did to Sonny. Kai stared at him with a confused expression, then asked in a strange voice,
"Really? Then how did you survive?"
Sonny turned away and moved his shoulders slightly. A combination of good attributes and powerful memories. That's how I survived. Well, most of me did. With that, he shook his head and gritted his teeth in anger. Enough talk. You all know the plan, so let's get it over with. Sonny was going to reach the pinnacle of his hunter career. He was going to hunt the devil. Inside the tenumbrous grand hall of the majestic cathedral, darkness reigned unopposed. It drowned the vast hall, clinging to its walls and tall columns. The rare beams of light falling through the narrow windows only served to make it seem deeper. 6 humans entered the temple, the light of their lantern memories failing to pierce the veil of darkness even slightly. For a moment, there was utter silence, and then a sudden yell broke it apart. Now! A tall young woman with silver hair and calm, striking gray eyes raised her sword. Then, a wave of brilliant white light shone from it, reaching far and wide. The darkness was instantly torn apart and obliterated, vanishing into the deepest, darkest corners of the cathedral. And there, right in front of them, a giant clad in black steel armor was revealed. His sword was already on its way to reap the lives of unfortunate fools who had dared to desecrate the silence of the ancient temple. The great sword he wielded seemed as heavy as the stone pillars that supported the roof of the temple. Falling from above, it looked like a vertical tear in reality that revealed the impenetrable darkness hiding beneath. What could stop such a monstrous blow? Perhaps the shield that contained the weight of the heavens themselves could. Effie dashed forward, raising the dusk shard. The heavy shield received the terrible impact of the devil's unstoppable attack. A deafening sound of steel clashing against steel rolled across the grand hall like a sound shockwave, growing louder as it reflected from the stone walls. The shield held. The floor beneath Effie's feet, however, did not. It cracked and shattered, sending the huntress reeling back. A pained yelp escaped from her lips. The Black Knight lingered for a moment, seemingly surprised by the obliteration of the darkness that had shrouded him. However, his hesitation lasted only for a fraction of a second, not nearly enough for the humans to prepare themselves for his next attack. And it was already coming. Without paying any attention to Effie, who was flying back, the devil turned with astonishing swiftness and aimed his sword at Nephis. But before he could perform his second strike, a massive piece of rubble the size of an adult human suddenly flew through the air and crashed into the armored giant at full speed. All the Black Knight could do was lean forward and meet it with his shoulder. The boulder exploded into 1,000 pieces, leaving the devil unscathed. The creature that threw it walked through the dust with utter indifference, 2 ruby flames burning behind the visor of her helmet. The Stone Saint had arrived to face the Black Knight. The Stone Saint walked toward the Black Knight with stalwart indifference. Her body shone with dark radiance, and there were wisps of ghostly gray fog dancing on her elegant armor. The ruby eyes of the taciturn monster burned with menacing crimson flames. The darkness that served the devil had been vanquished by changing stars' incandescent light, but the shadows populating the ancient temple only grew deeper because of it. Now, they were shifting, as if reaching toward the saint to fall upon her shoulders like a mantle. Without slowing down, the saint raised her shield and hit its rim twice with the edge of her sword. It was as though challenging the Black Knight to a duel.
With the two creatures finally facing each other, it became even more apparent that there was a mysterious connection between the two of them. Despite the fact that the Black Knight towered above the graceful living statue, their general appearance and design of their armaments were eerily similar. It was just that, in front of the intricate stone-like armor of the Saint, the Black Knight's own formidable full plate, which had been masterfully forged from indestructible black steel, seemed almost crude. Facing the original masterpiece, he looked like a clumsy imposter. Sonny knew that his intuition was right when he caught a hint of the same dim, nascent emotion that the Saint had shown toward the walking Colossus. Despite the fact that the fallen devil was vastly more powerful than her, and both outclassed and outranked her, witnessing him, the Stone Saint felt nothing but disdain, contempt even. All of these observations had not taken Sonny more than half a second. In the next moment, both creatures dashed forward and collided in a furious clangor of metal. The battle had begun. Now that his core was close to being saturated to the brim by the shadow fragments Sonny had collected from hundreds of nightmare creatures, and a few humans, the augmentation provided by the shadow was able to make him powerful enough to almost reach the level of an actual awakened. By the same logic, the Stone Saint should have been brought very close to the power level of a fallen abomination. Sonny even suspected that she was enhanced by the shadow even more than he would be himself. The shadow and the shadow seemed to intertwine perfectly, almost as if this was the true purpose of the augmenting facet of his aspect. The Saint had slaughtered 2 fallen beasts even before becoming a shadow, although it had been at the cost of her life. What would she be able to do now, reborn and reinforced by the mystical power of his divine aspect? Kill a deadly bastard of a fallen devil, hopefully. Sonny watched the battle in tense silence. For a moment, all of his companions only watched as well. It was glorious. But still, the gap between the two of them was just too vast. Even with the help of the shadow, the Stone Saint was clearly not a match for the Black Knight in terms of sheer power. Luckily, she was not alone. As the two creatures collided and turned into a whirlwind of steel, the humans broke from their reverie and joined the fight to support their monster. Castor appeared at a terrible speed, striking at the giant black sword with his elegant Jan. The ghostly green blade slid off the surface of the great sword without any result, but the impact of his strike managed to slow the Black Knight by a fraction of a second. That was all the Stone Saint needed to deliver a blow of her own, closing the distance to the giant fiend in order to turn his size and reach superiority against him. She struck upward at the pommel of the great sword with her shield. The hands of the Black Knight were thrown above his head, and using that opening, she bulldozed into his abdomen with her shoulder, sending the giant reeling. The violence of the impact was so fierce that several fractures appeared on the surface of her stone-like pauldron. As the dull metal sound rang across the grand hall, shards of stone flew into the air. But it was not in vain. The momentary gap in the defense of the devil allowed Nephis to deliver a devastating thrust with her silver longsword. Enhanced by the annihilating white flame and the miraculous enchantment of the Dawn Shard, the sword hit against the breastplate of the Black Knight's armor and broke through, sinking deep into the body of the fiend. For a moment, everyone froze, stunned at the ease with which they were able to pierce the seemingly impregnable armor of the fallen devil. Just a moment before, Castor's Jan didn't even leave a scratch on the black steel of the fiend's greatsword. But then, things took a sharp turn for the worse. The Black Knight did not seem to care about several inches of incandescent steel penetrating his chest at all. Regaining his balance, he indifferently swiped his sword down, forcing both Nephis and the Stone Saint to stagger back. The black blade hit the marble floor, causing the ground to shake and throwing Nephis to the ground. Before anyone could react, the devil let go of the hilt of his sword with one hand and delivered a shattering backhanded blow to the Stone Saint. The strength of that strike would have been enough to pulverize any human. But the Stone Saint was made of a far more enduring material than flesh. Still, the living statue was thrown back like a broken doll. Almost instantly, the Black Knight turned to Nephis once more, The terrifying sword flew into the air, ready to split her apart.
I was right!
A savage smile appeared on Sunny's face. Brandishing the midnight shard, he dashed forward and screamed,
Plan C!
Plan C was born out of the prediction Sunny had made when discussing how they were going to kill the Black Knight. He had suspected all along that since Nephis was a perfect counter to the Black Knight's most dreadful power, he would concentrate all his attention on dealing with her first. In fact, the devil was going to make killing Changing Star his #1 priority. Sunny felt a tug of guilt that he quickly shoved aside as he dashed in, aiming straight for the Black Knight. He had not told Nephis that she would be a target. Not really. Her light would be what started the whole battle, which instinctively made sense that she would draw in more of the onslaught. But this connection, and this pull she seemed to exert over the Black Knight, went deeper than that. Nephis was indeed a perfect counter against the living darkness, but even better than that, she was the perfect bait. The black blade fell down, missing Nephis only by a hair's breadth. She rolled back and performed an impossible handspring, launching herself into the air from the ground. Landing on the marble floor with the effortless grace of a trained acrobat, Changing Star slid back a few meters and came to a stop some distance away from the Black Knight. But the knight was just as fast. No, much faster. The giant was already lunging forward to skewer her on the tip of his terrible greatsword. She shifted slightly, dodging the deadly attack, and dashed forward along the vast length of the black blade. Her sword flashed through the air and impacted against the vambrace of the menacing armor, leaving a deep scratch on its dark surface. Everything was happening so fast that other members of the cohort were having trouble joining the fight. The Stone Saint had just landed on the marble floor a moment ago and was currently rising back to her feet. Effie had recovered from receiving the full brunt of the Black Knight's first attack and was rushing forward, but she was still a few meters away. Kai had drawn his bow, but couldn't send an arrow flying without the risk of hitting one of his companions. With how potent the enchantment of the blood arrow was, this was something he could not allow to happen. Cassia mostly relied on echoes to fight, and since they were not enhanced by the Dawn Shard, their utility in this battle would not have been high. More than that, she risked being destroyed by a single strike from the Black Knight. As such, she was relegated to holding back for now, and would only join the fight if things really went south. So for now, it was up to Sunny and Castor to slow the fiend down. Their only saving grace, and the point that Sunny had explained in detail, was that the terrifying greatsword, while deadly and utterly unstoppable, well, almost, was ultimately an unwieldy and vulnerable weapon. The Black Knight was strong enough to throw it around as though the giant blade weighed no more than a feather, and skilled enough to turn momentum and inertia into useful tools as opposed to obstacles, but he still had to obey the laws of physics. Even more importantly, the damn thing was very long, which meant that they had to stick to the fallen devil like glue in order to use its long reach against him. As the Black Knight sidestepped and pulled his greatsword into a vicious horizontal swipe aimed at Changing Star, Sunny closed the distance between them and approached the devil from the opposite side. The Midnight Shard flashed, striking at the elbow joint of the plate armor. All Sunny achieved was to leave a small scratch on it, but he also pushed the Black Knight's hand down and closer to his body a bit, changing the angle of the swipe slightly. At the same time, Castor dove under the terrible blade and suddenly appeared right in front of the devil, thrusting his Jan at the steel helmet. The Black Knight just turned his head slightly, causing the ghostly green blade to slide off the helmet without doing any damage. At the same time, he let go of the sword with one hand and threw his elbow back, almost smashing Sunny's skull in, all the while continuing his deadly strike at Nephis. Nevertheless, their tandem attack helped Changing Star avoid being cut in half. Taking a swift step forward, she raised her sword and received the blow on its blade. Since she had time to close the distance and was now mere centimeters away from the devil, the part of the great sword that hit her was close to the crossguard, and as such did not carry too much destructive force. Still, it was enough to send her crashing onto the ground, the sword sliding from her hand. Even with the three of them fighting together, they couldn't slow the cursed creature for more than a moment. But then, a moment was all they needed, because it gave Effie enough time to rejoin the fight. It also gave Kai the opportunity to take a shot. A black arrow streaked through the air and plunged right into the crack of the devil's visor. Sunny noticed a startled expression on the charming archer's face. He himself was stunned too. No one had expected Kai to actually hit the bastard right in the only chink in his armor, least of all Kai himself. The head of the Black Knight was violently jerked backward, but in the next moment, Kai staggered and groaned. Sunny grimaced.
Shit!
Sunny had anticipated that result too. He had guessed a long time ago that there was no flesh beneath the menacing black armor. Rather, the armor itself was the nightmare creature, or at least the vessel for the evil soul of a powerful revenant. As such, there was no blood for the ghastly arrow to drink. That's why Kai had been affected by the backlash of his fallen memory despite hitting his target. Just in case something like that happened, Sunny had tasked the charming archer with fashioning a few mundane arrows out of splinters of bone that were everywhere on the Forgotten Shore, so Kai wasn't entirely out of the fight yet. However, the amount of damage he would be able to do to the terrifying devil was not extremely low. But Sunny had no time to lament this turn of events. The battle was only growing more chaotic and fierce. Thanks to the incredible precision of Kai's shot, the Black Knight was disoriented for a moment. Effie arrived just at the right time to use it to their advantage. Leaning low, she used the momentum of her lunge and the bone-breaking weight of the Dusk Shard to deliver a devastating blow to the thigh of the steel giant. As another shockwave of sound rolled through the grand hall, the fiend staggered. But a fraction of a second later, he brought his armored fist down on the mighty huntress, causing her to reel away with a pained scream. The pommel of the black sword lurched forward, catching Castor in the chest. Despite how fast the proud legacy was moving, he crumpled to the floor like a broken mannequin. Then, the Black Knight turned his blade to Sunny. Sunny gritted his teeth and retreated from the attempted sneak attack. The damn bastard was simply unstoppable. None of their attacks had achieved anything except for annoying him a little.
Not good, not good.
Pushing herself off the ground, Nephis looked at the fallen devil that towered above her like a bastion of darkness. Her face was pale, and there was blood flowing from her mouth. What's worse, the silver sword had slid far away and was now out of her reach. The incandescent radiance disappeared from its blade, allowing for the darkness that hid in the corners of the grand hall to slowly begin crawling back. Nothing stood between her and the Black Knight anymore. Suddenly opening his eyes wide, Sunny glanced into the depths of the cathedral, and then a short scream escaped from his lips.
Neff, run!
Nephis was sprawled on the stone floor, her sword just out of reach as the Black Knight approached her. Sunny had screamed for her to run, but it was too late. There was no way she was getting away from the fallen devil. As the silver sword was extinguished, Changing Star lingered for a moment. The swirling darkness started to close in, but then something miraculous started to happen. White flames ignited in her eyes, and suddenly the pristine white breastplate of the Star Legion armor was enveloped in blinding white light. The darkness that had begun to seep back into the grand hall of the ancient temple reeled away once more. It appeared as though Nephis changed the target of her miraculous aspect ability and used her armor as its conduit instead of the sword. But from the side, it simply looked like there was a furious white star burning in her chest. That momentary delay almost cost her her life.
Neff, run!
As soon as Sunny's scream echoed through the cathedral, the terrifying black blade came down once again. This time, Nephis seemingly had no chance to escape, but somehow, she did. Pushing herself off the marble floor, she twisted her body and barely avoided the falling guillotine of the Black Knight's greatsword, then swiftly rolled away. The next moment, she was already on her feet. As the devil lunged forward to crush her, Changing Star did something that no one would ever expect the proud daughter of the immortal Flame Clan to do. She turned her back to the enemy and ran. From their early days in the labyrinth, Sunny knew that Nephis could be incredibly fast when she wanted to. And indeed, just a second later, she was already far away. Cursing under his breath, he followed. No matter how fast Nephis was, the Black Knight was faster. The devil was already pursuing his runaway prey, moving with a celerity that seemed strange for a creature of his size, especially one clad in an incredibly heavy suit of steel armor. With each moment, he drew closer and closer to Changing Star, his sword ready to reap her life. Straining his muscles to their limit, Sunny ran as fast as he could too, desperately trying to catch up to them. With Effie and Castor temporarily out of commission, and Cassie and Kai sidelined, Sunny was the only one left. He had to make it in time, no matter what. If he didn't,
Come on!
he didn't want to even consider the alternative outcome. He had to make it. Gritting his teeth, Sunny somehow managed to accelerate even more. Nephis was already halfway through the grand hall of the cathedral. The statue of the nameless goddess on the far side of it must have appeared in her sight. It was then that she suddenly stopped and turned around, sliding on the marble floor a few meters because of the momentum. Her silver sword had already been dismissed and summoned back from her soul sea. It seemed as though, out of desperation, Nephis decided to mount one last suicidal attack on the swiftly approaching steel giant. Or maybe she had just lost her mind completely. But it only seemed that way. The corners of Sunny's mouth curled upward.
That's my girl.
Plan C was about to come to fruition. Changing Star had performed her role perfectly. Well, what else did Sunny expect from her? He was wondering if he now knew her better than he even knew himself. All that remained was to stall the Black Knight for a few seconds. The devil descended upon the silver-haired girl in a fury of obliterating black steel. Nephis met him with her usual calm resolve, dodging strike after strike with incredible skill, just like a lifetime ago when she had been facing Castor at the dojo of the academy. She used her understanding and control of the flow of combat to breach the gap in speed between her and her opponent. She wasn't as much reacting to the deadly blows delivered by the devil as predicting them, moving to evade the strikes of the black greatsword before they could even happen. Of course, this deadly dance could not last. The tiniest of mistakes would be her last. And even if she didn't make any, Nephis was not going to be able to keep this level of concentration for long, not to mention the insane toll this fearsome clash took on her stamina and endurance. But she didn't have to. All she needed to do was keep the bastard busy for a couple of seconds, and when those seconds ran out, a sudden crack of breaking stone resounded in the darkness of the ancient temple. In all the commotion, the stone saint had strangely disappeared. After Sunny had confirmed that the fallen devil was targeting Nephis above anyone else, their strongest combatant, his shadow, was nowhere to be seen. That, of course, was on purpose. She was laying the groundwork for the plan to work while the rest of them kept the Black Knight distracted. The plan, however, could only happen in a certain spot in the Grand Hall. That was where Changing Star had to lure the Black Knight in case he fixated on her. Following the descriptions provided to her by Sunny, she led the devil deeper into the cathedral and stopped just in the right place. And then she engaged him in a fierce battle to give the saint time to close the trap, which she did by taking a running start and crashing with all her weight into one of the tall, magnificent pillars supporting the roof of the cathedral. This pillar in particular was damaged at the base, making it uniquely unstable. Sunny knew every corner of the ruined temple like the palm of his hand, so he knew about this flaw of the pillar as well. That had been what he based Plan C on. As Sunny ran, he could see everything that followed in all its majestic brutality. The breaking of stone resounded in the vast hall of the ancient temple. A net of cracks appeared on the massive, incredibly tall column and quickly spread to a deep gash in its base. Shards of stone flew in every direction, and the column began to topple. It seemed slow at first, but in fact it wasn't. In the center of the hall, the Black Knight paused his relentless onslaught for a moment and turned his head, following the sound of cracking stone. he was a second too late. As Nephis dashed away, the pillar fell on the devil, crushing him under countless tons of hard stone. The massive pillar plummeted down and fell right on the Black Knight. The devil turned slightly at the last moment, lowering his sword to the ground. His crimson eyes flashed with unassailable menace. As a thunderous crack resounded in the dark hall of the ruined cathedral, pieces of stone and clouds of dust flew into the air.
Got you.
A feeling of savage joy ignited in Sonny's heart. Without slowing down, he dove into the dust. Of course, he didn't think the fiend would be destroyed by his trap, but it had to do some damage to the fearsome black armor at least. Nearing the place where he had last seen the tall dark figure, Sonny witnessed an incredible sight. The pillar was floating high above the ground, its crushing weight resting on the shoulder of the steel giant. In the place of the impact, the pillar's surface had cracked and shattered. The Black Knight, despite somehow remaining upright, had not escaped unscathed. His heavy breastplate fractured, revealing nothing but a mass of impenetrable living darkness within. The armor plate on the knight's shoulder, which had received the main brunt of the blow, was practically destroyed, leaving that whole arm hanging listlessly, twisted at a horrifically wrong angle. The helmet of the devil was dented and covered by a net of small cracks, each seeping with ghostly crimson light. The Black Knight did not look good, but it still appeared utterly terrifying. What was even better, though, was the fact that he was currently stuck under the pillar, unable to move. Sonny had to make use of the situation, but before he could, the devil raised his broken arm and placed it on the column. Then, he lowered his head as though gathering his strength, and effortlessly threw the monumental stone pillar into the air. Sonny's eyes widened. Diving down, he barely avoided the flying wall of granite. The pillar flew above his head and crashed down onto the marble floor, then rolled several times and came to a rest in a deafening rumble of shattering stone. The length of it blocked the grand hall, cutting off the way out for the rest of the cohort, and completely cut off any possible path of retreat for Sonny. Not that he had any plans of retreating. Regaining his balance, Sonny brandished the Midnight Shard and dashed toward the wounded Black Knight for a vicious attack. Both he and the Stone Saint arrived at the same time. However, the fallen devil was still a force to be reckoned with. Despite the fact that his armor was cracked and his speed was somewhat diminished, there was still enough power in his body to obliterate all of them. Holding the greatsword with one hand, he suddenly pulled it into a fearsome slash. The black blade whistled through the air, cutting a chaotic arc around the fiend. Sonny was forced to jump back, but the Saint managed to deflect the blow with her shield and redirect its power, slowing down only a little. In the next moment, she closed the distance to the Black Knight and delivered a terrible strike of her own. Aiming at the base of his sword's blade, the knight simply moved the sword away, then violently bashed her in the head with the pommel, causing bits of stone-like metal to fly into the air. The Saint staggered back, the visor of her helmet shattered. Unlike the massive darkness hiding in the black suit of steel armor, there was an actual face beneath hers. Sonny allowed himself to stare for a fraction of a second. This was his first time seeing the face of the Stone Saint. The Stone Saint looked just how he had imagined. Her skin was gray like granite, and the features of her face were almost like that of a human. With the exception that they were just too flawless, it was as though she had not been born, but actually cut from stone by a mad sculptor, one obsessed with absolute perfection. As a result, what should have been beautiful looked eerie and hideous instead. In fact, glancing at the inhumanly perfect face of his shadow, Sonny felt nothing but a cold sense of revulsion, fright even. The fact that her haunting face was utterly devoid of any hint of human emotion only made it even more disturbing. The shadow caught herself from falling and dashed to the side, avoiding another strike from the terrifying giant. The great sword came down once more. It shattered the marble plates of the floor, in the spot where the saint had stood just a moment ago. It was then that Nephis rejoined the fight. The three of them attacked the Black Knight simultaneously, perfectly coordinating their assault. Changing Star threw her longsword forward, aiming to sever the broken arm of the devil entirely. The Stone Saint went after the great sword again. Then, Sunny did something crazy. Dashing to the enormous black blade, he stepped on its surface and ran up, using it as a ladder. He had a solid second of stability before the great sword was pulled into another attack. Feeling it moving beneath his feet, Sunny used the momentum to jump up and grab onto the helmet of the terrifying fiend. Mounting the devil, he hung from the Black Knight's neck and delivered a savage stab at its shoulder. His aim was just a centimeter away from the edge of the shattered shoulder plate. Sunny's hand was empty when he started the strike, but by the time it reached its mark, the moon shard had appeared in his grasp. During their journey back to the Dark City, he noticed that Ascended memories received a less dramatic enhancement from the Crown of Dawn. Unlike the Awakened ones, they weren't elevated by almost an entire rank in terms of power. The augmentation, however, was still significant, enough to breach the gap between the ghostly stiletto and the armor of the fallen devil, at least. The needle-sharp point of the moon shard broke through the impenetrable steel and sunk deep into the shoulder joint of the indestructible black armor. Obviously, Sunny knew that this strike would not do a lot of damage to the knight, but dealing damage was not his goal. Devil or not, fallen or not, the Black Knight was still a creature modeled after human parts and range of motion. In particular, having several inches of steel, glass, stuck in the joint of his armor, was inevitably going to reduce the mobility of his arm. Indeed, with both of his arms damaged, the speed with which the fiend was able to move his greatsword around considerably diminished. It was still utterly terrifying, but not insurmountable anymore. Just a moment faster than the Black Knight, the Stone Saint stepped over the black blade and pinned it to the floor with one of her greaves. Using all of her weight to keep it down, she threw her sword aside and raised her shield high above her head with both hands. For a moment, time slowed down, and then the saint brought the shield down, delivering a devastating blow to the weakest point of the great sword. The rim of the stone shield hit against the black steel, and with a deafening ringing, the great sword shattered. Augmented by the shadow, and with the help of 900 fragments that Sunny had collected, the saint had become incredibly strong. The graceful stone body of the taciturn monster hid incredible power to begin with, and now it was vastly enhanced. Holding her shield with both hands, the shadow delivered a devastating blow at the weakest point of the black blade. The blade, which was pinned between the marble floor and her greave, rang deafeningly and shattered. Still mounting the Black Knight, Sunny grinned with vicious joy. Then he let go of the dented helmet of the devil and pushed himself off, performing a backward flip and landing nimbly several meters away. Nephis immediately disengaged too. Both of them knew that there was nothing more dangerous than an enemy on the brink of death. With nothing to lose, humans often relinquished any sense of self-preservation and turned berserk, taking their killer with them to the grave. Nightmare creatures were much the same, only more terrifying. Despite the fact that Sunny was sure that the knight's weakness hid in his sword, he wasn't certain what would happen if the blade was actually broken. Hopefully the Black Knight would just crumble into a pile of steel. If not, it would be better to be far away when they found out. As the shards of the black blade rained on the floor, and the Stone Saint fell on one knee, a shudder ran through the devil's body. The darkness hiding in the corners of the ruined cathedral suddenly boiled and lunged forward in a wave, but none of it reached the Black Knight, annihilated by the radiance of Changing Star's intricate white armor. The devil froze in a twisted pose, his hands powerlessly hanging down, his back bent. The black steel of his armor was rusting. It was swiftly turning dull brown, its luster gone, its once impregnable surface looking corroded and brittle. Then, he slowly and laboriously raised his head and turned it slightly to the side. It was as if staring at the face of the nameless goddess whose statue oversaw the dark hall of the ruined cathedral for thousands of years. As the devil looked at the goddess, the crimson light of his eyes slowly weakened and dimmed, and then suddenly exploded into furious red flames. The rusty armor came apart, exposing the massive darkness hiding within. The darkness stretched its limbs and rose above the kneeling saint, the parts of the armor that floated in it giving the creature a vaguely humanoid shape, revealing its true form. A ghostly colossus made of darkness and rusting steel towered above the taciturn monster like an omen of death. Two crimson fires burning furiously in the black depths. Another flame appeared just beneath them, like a twisted mouth made from the flames of hell. And then, a terrifying roar shook the ancient temple. Sonny took an involuntary step back, a feeling of dread rising from the depths of his soul. His eyes searched for Nephis and found her standing a few meters behind the stone saint. Changing Star was hesitating, looking at the dark apparition with an uncertain expression. She caught his gaze, lingered for a moment, and then nodded, understanding what Sonny wanted to convey without the need for any words. Then, Nephis cautiously backed away, not letting the devil out of her sight. What was going to happen next was not something a human could survive, not a sleeper at least. With a harrowing fury, the creature of darkness crashed down on the saint. The Black Knight's hands tore through the air and wrapped around the taciturn monster's neck, then raised the living statue in the air as if her stone body weighed nothing. The devil brought the saint high above the marble floor of the ruined cathedral and squeezed her neck as if trying to strangle her. A net of cracks streaked through the shadow's armor, bits of stone falling down. Through all of it, the emotionless expression on the hauntingly inhuman face of the saint did not change one bit, but in her ruby eyes, a hint of a feeling appeared, much stronger than ever before. Disdain. Letting go of the shield, she raised her hands, grasped the vambraces of the rusting armor, and easily shattered them in her grip. As another roar resounded in the darkness, the stone saint fell back to the ground, landing with elegant grace. She instantly dodged the claws of the apparition, which had bent down to shatter the living stone once and for all. Then, the stone saint took a step forward. The saint was right beneath the leaning devil now. As her ruby eyes flashed with ruthlessness, she lunged forward and delivered a crushing blow to his chest. Her gauntlet tore through the breastplate of the rusted armor and sank deep into the living darkness, right where a human heart would have been, or a soul core. A moment later, the crimson flames burning in the depths of the dark creature exploded into a wave of blinding red light and disappeared. The dark essence of the devil dissipated like fog, its remnants vanquished by Changing Star's radiance. The pieces of armor fell to the ground in a clangor of steel. The terrifying devil of the cathedral, the Black Knight, was dead. Sonny threw his head back and let out an exhilarated, vengeful laugh.
Finally! Fucking finally!
The rest of his cohort remained silent, but was making their way toward Sonny and Nephis over the rubble of the collapsed pillar. Oh, revenge tasted so great. A moment later, the voice of the spell whispered sweetly into his ear. "You have slain a fallen devil, forsaken knight. Your shadow grows stronger." Sonny smiled. He spoke in his head as if the spell could even hear him.
Anything else you want to add? A memory? An echo?
However, a moment later, he forgot all about the spell. A cold shiver ran down his spine, because right in front of him, something very strange was happening to the stone saint. Her hand was still raised, frozen in the same position as when she had pierced the heart of the living darkness with her fist. And in it, Nephis's eyes widened. Sonny put words to the expression on her face. He had a curious hollow feeling in his chest.
What the hell is that thing?
Grasped in the shadow's fist was a strange, beautiful, and ominous gem. It was utterly black, as though suffused with impenetrable darkness. The glossy black surface seemed to devour light, turning the vast hall of the ruined cathedral even darker than it had been before. Deep within that black void, crimson flames burned with a menacing red glow. It was pulsating in a slow and bizarre rhythm, drowning everything around it in dim red light. Painted by it, the stone saint looked as though she was drenched in blood. The gem she held looked like a bloody, still beating heart that she had torn out of the Black Knight's chest. Gazing at it, Sonny felt a strange sense of foreboding.
What the hell is this thing?
The gem looked sort of like a soul shard, but different. He had never seen a black shard to begin with, or one radiating such an intense glow. It also didn't seem like a piece of a broken core. On the contrary, it appeared whole, as if it was untouched by the chaos of their battle. Sonny wondered to himself, is that what a soul core of a nightmare creature looks like? No, not a soul core. A soul? Stunned, Sonny counted the crimson flames burning in the depths of the black gem. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 flames for the 4 cores of the fallen devil. The thing that his shadow held in her hand was the Black Knight's soul, or his essence at least. But how had it turned into a material form? Is this what essences looked like when they remained untouched? Or did the Stone Saint do it? If so, how? Or more importantly, why? Sonny tore his eyes from the stone and looked at the passive face of his Stone Saint.
What is she doing with it?
As Sonny and Nephis looked in stunned silence, the shadow finally moved. Bringing the black gem close to her face, she lingered for a moment. A hint of a dark, macabre emotion appeared in her eyes. And then the Stone Saint swallowed it. Sonny blinked.
What?
The Stone Saint had indeed opened her mouth, bit into the eerie crystal, and swallowed it. Just like that, the soul of the Black Knight was devoured. The red glow it emanated disappeared, returning the world to its natural shade. And a moment after that, the Stone Saint fell into the shadows and disappeared too. Sonny gaped at where the Stone Saint previously stood. His mouth hung open, speechless, but his thoughts were swirling.
Wait, I didn't dismiss her. What the hell is happening?
Nephis looked at him with a perplexed expression. Sonny, what just happened? What did she do? For once, Sonny didn't have to twist the truth and deceive anyone. Opening his mouth, he honestly said,
I have no idea.
Walking over to the pile of rusty steel that remained after the devil had been destroyed, Sonny moved it around with his foot for a bit and then mumbled,
There's no shards left. It's empty.
Changing Star remained silent for a few moments, then frowned. Finally, she spoke. Your echo is very peculiar. While everyone was recovering from the fight and tending to their wounds, Sonny walked to a secluded corner and dove into the Soul Sea. The tranquil expanse of still water met him with a familiar silence. Glancing at the rows of motionless shadows standing at the edge of it, Sonny noticed that the Black Knight had joined their ranks. The steel giant stood among all the other creatures Sonny had slain, just as empty as the rest of them. There was no trace of the menacing and deadly fallen devil left. Now, he was just one of the shadows. A smirk crossed Sonny's face.
Welcome, you bastard. Make yourself at home. You're not going anywhere else ever, anyway.
A feeling of deep, dark satisfaction grasped his heart. Staring at the motionless form of his sworn enemy, Sonny had to stop himself from kicking the Black Knight with all his strength. He was just a shadow now. Kicking him would have been like kicking the air. Plus, Sonny wasn't vindictive. At least, not to that degree. Killing the bastard once was enough for him.
Who's the one laughing now, huh? I won't deny it, you got me good. But I'm still breathing while you're dead. At the end of the day, that's all that matters.
This world. No, both this world and the real one. was full of creatures that were bigger, stronger, and more powerful than Sunny. Many of them had either threatened his existence or felt compelled to treat him like dirt to show their superiority. But he was still here despite all of them, neither destroyed nor subjugated. He was free, alive, and growing stronger with each day. If spite had fueled his actions, well, he would take every last drop he could take. One day, they would be the ones cowering in front of him, or be destroyed by him, just like the Black Knight had been. With a dark expression, Sunny turned away and walked to stand beneath the black sun of his shadow core. Then, he summoned the Stone Saint. But nothing happened. Sunny frowned and repeated the summon again, to the same effect. Sunny worried. He willed the runes to appear in the air in front of him. Luckily, his worst fears did not come true. The Stone Saint was still listed as one of his shadows.
Then what is going on with her?
Concentrating on the runes describing her name, Sunny made it expand and read, Shadow, Stone Saint, Shadow Rank, Awakened, Shadow Class, Monster, Shadow Attributes, Battlemaster, Stalwart, Spark of Divinity, Shadow Description. Stone Saint was created by the treacherous Lost from Light in the cursed darkness of the Forgotten Shore. Shadow Fragments, 80 out of 200. So far, everything looked to be the same as it was before. Even the number of shadow fragments he had fed her did not change. But then, a new string of runes shimmered into view beneath that number, where nothing had been before. When Sunny saw it, his eyes widened. The runes read, The Stone Saint is evolving. He lingered for a few moments, and then looked up at the shadow core. Somewhere inside, his shadow was resting in the waves of nurturing dark flames, her very being going through a mysterious transformation. It appeared as though consuming the soul of the Black Knight had allowed her to enter a stage of growth that Sunny had not anticipated. But how long would that evolution process take? And what kind of a transformation was the saint going through? Sunny had no idea. He had never even heard about something like this happening before. He was in uncharted waters once again, but he couldn't wait to find out where this new mystery would lead, and what powers his shadow might be gaining. Evolving. The Stone Saint was evolving. Leaving the mindscape of the Soul Sea, Sunny furrowed his brow. His eyes, however, were full of excitement. What exactly about her was going to change? There weren't that many possibilities. Was there? It could be either her rank, her class, or her attributes. It was logical to assume that by defeating an opponent of a higher rank, the shadow would be able to ascend to a new rank herself. However, there was a flaw in that logic. The Black Knight wasn't the first fallen creature Sunny and the Saint had slain. In fact, he was the third, with the Corpse Eater and the Spire Messenger being the first two. That's not even counting the 2 iron spiders the living statue had butchered before falling to Sunny's blade herself. But she had not done anything like pulling a black gem out of their corpses before. So, most likely what allowed her to absorb the soul of that particular nightmare creature was not the mere fact of its incredible power, it was the strange but obvious kinship that the two of them shared. At least, Sunny felt that this guess of his was right. He wondered for a moment what that kinship could be from. Could it span back to before the darkness spread across this godforsaken land? It was possible. That didn't help him understand what changes would occur to the taciturn monster, though. Still, it was a very valuable piece of information to learn. In the future, if Sunny wanted to evolve his shadows, he would have to find not only a powerful, but also a suitable opponent for them to defeat. A kindred abomination of higher rank or class. At least that seemed to be the new rule. Tilting his head, he tried to remember if there was another creature on the Forgotten Shore he knew of whose soul could be fed to the saint. For a moment, the image of the walking colossus appeared in his mind.
Yeah, no, I'm not even gonna think about that.
Shaking his head, Sunny smiled slightly and walked over to his companions. Now that their deal had been concluded, The future he was so afraid of was finally upon them. The light of the lanterns invaded the spacious room that had once belonged to the priestess of this ancient temple. With 6 people entering its peaceful haven, however, it didn't seem so vast anymore. Sonny looked around and sighed. The hidden quarters were just like he had left them. There were pieces of simple but luxurious furniture carved out of pale wood, with a few mismatched things that he had scavenged from the ruins. The stone walls were decorated with intricate engravings. An empty chest that used to be full of shimmering soul shards stood dark and empty. Feeding the stone saint had really bankrupted him. Sadly, being the master of a hungry shadow was not the cheapest of ambitions. On one of the walls, sets of lines were scratched into the stone, marking all the days he had spent living in the ruined cathedral. For a long time, this had been his home. The best home he ever had, really. Which was a sad thing to say about a windowless stone room hidden in the middle of a cursed city. But Sonny liked it a lot. He was going to miss this dark, quiet place very much. The other members of the cohort, with the exception of Effie and Cassia, were looking around with interest. Even Nephis showed a bit of curiosity. With a strange look on his face, Kai turned to Sonny and asked, This is where you were living?" Sonny raised an eyebrow and shrugged. "Yeah, why?" The beautiful archer smiled with visible delight. "No, nothing. It's just that this place is so tasteful. I did not expect your residence to be this chic." Sonny narrowed his eyes. He was slightly hurt by that comment. He frowned and cleared his throat.
"What did you expect it to be?"
Kai looked down, suddenly flustered. "Oh, you know, for some reason I always imagined you were sleeping on a floor in a cave. Like, you seem to be Spartan, very direct and without time or patience for much flair. Yeah, stupid, I know. Why would there be a cave in a temple?" Hearing that, Effie couldn't help but laugh.
Wait till you see what's in his closet, Knight."
Sonny gave her a menacing glare, but thought better of saying anything. He understood that the huntress was just trying to lighten the mood. Now that this fight was over, they had to face Gunlog. Knowing what was going to come next, every member of the cohort was consumed by fear and doubt right now. Effie more than the rest, because her role in the spectacle that Gunlog had planned for them was especially cruel. A bit later, they were sitting around the hearth, the smell of food still lingering in the air. Everyone was silent, looking at the fire, their minds consumed with dark thoughts. Sonny knew that he had to make a decision now, but felt reluctant to do so. Instead, he just watched the shadows dance on the walls of the hidden chamber. After a while, Nephis finally broke the silence. Turning to him, she lingered for a bit, and then spoke. "We will be leaving in the morning. Will you be coming with us?" Her voice sounded even as always, but Sonny knew her well enough to discern notes of a suppressed emotion in it. Was that hope? Sonny thought bitterly.
"Hope is the poison that will get you killed."
He shook his head. No, that was the old Sonny talking. One who was comfortable hiding behind his insanity. One who had given up. Who was too afraid to face the ruthless truth and pay the price to take what belonged to him, was his by right. Triumph, salvation, and hope. Sonny was done being afraid. With a calm expression, he looked at Nephis and said,
"The day after tomorrow. I still have things to finish in the Dark City. I will join you the day after tomorrow, for better or worse."
She was silent for a few moments, and then a soft smile appeared on her face. "Thank you. I have some preparations to make too. We will return to the Bright Castle together then." He gave her a nod and turned away. Nephis had never shown any sign of being able to feel fear, at least not that he remembered. But he knew that it was just a front. Sonny knew that she knew fear all too well, better than anyone here except maybe for him. Nephis met her fears face to face at a very young age. It didn't mean she concurred with it, just that she was practiced at enduring the feeling. So he suspected that behind her indifferent face and even voice, she must have been scared too. And it was she who was going to fight the immortal Bright Lord to the death soon, not them. Sunny looked at the shadows. One day, after one day, the prophecy will begin to come true. As soon as the dawn came, bringing with it the mournful sound of retreating waves, Nephis and her cohort left the ruined cathedral. Sunny remained alone, standing on the edge between the darkness of the old temple and the light of the new day. Lingering in the ornate doorway, he remained motionless for a while and watched as the artificial sun rose into the bleak gray skies above the cursed city. He stared at the glow for a moment, looking just enough away from it to not burn the image into his eyes. His thoughts lingered for a moment on the carvings from the cave wall. The artificial sun, the crimson tower. It all felt so far away. But if they could defeat Gunlog... Sunny paused. He was thinking of himself as part of a group, part of a whole that was greater than himself. After months spent in the company of other humans, being by himself once again felt strange. Just like it had felt strange to be with other people after all the time he had spent on his own here before that. Turning around, Sunny returned into the darkness. The grand hall of the ruined cathedral was peaceful and quiet. Without the menacing steel guardian, there was no one here to disturb the silence anymore. Even the darkness that populated the corners was empty and docile now. Not at all the living entity it had once been. It felt sort of lonesome. Freely walking through the echoing expanse of the magnificent hall, Sunny looked around, taking in the sight of the cathedral that had sheltered in the past from an entirely new perspective. Despite spending so much time here, he had never seen it like this. In the same way the inhabitants of the Dark City must have seen it all those years ago. Sunny had only looked down on the ancient hall from the height of one of the ancient temple's support beams, but now that he could walk through its halls, and through the naive without fearing for his life, it looked majestic. But it was also not safe anymore. At least it wouldn't be for much longer. With the Black Knight dead, no one was left to defend the cathedral from the nightmare creatures that would want to claim it as their nest. So Sunny couldn't stay here for long. Not that he had the luxury of that choice anymore. Throwing one last look at the beautiful dark hall, Sunny sighed and began climbing the statue of the nameless goddess. Back in the hidden chamber, it was once again utterly dark. Sunny hesitated for a bit and began collecting his belongings. It didn't take him long. Growing attached to material things was pointless on the Forgotten Shore. There was no way to take them with him to the real world. If he was even going to survive that long. If they even managed to make it to the gateway. If the gateway was actually in the Crimson Spire. But he still felt sad leaving all of his spoils behind. Back in the real world, Sunny never had a home like this, nor a lot of stuff to call his own. He had dreamed of enjoying a lavish lifestyle after becoming an awakened, but got stuck in this hell instead. This spacious room he called his home was a form of consolation, but now he had to leave it behind. In the end, he only took the bare necessities and then tidied the place up, wishing to leave it clean and orderly, despite knowing that there was little chance of anyone stumbling on this place again. After everything was done, Sunny glanced at the tranquil room and hesitated for a bit. Then, he walked over to the wall where he had once scratched countless lines into the stone to count the days and summoned the Prowling Thorn. He wanted to leave a mark of his presence here, something to tell that he had lived in this hidden chamber, in the ancient ruined cathedral, in the Dark City, on the Forgotten Shore, in this world. a small mark to witness that he had been here, had struggled here, and that he had left to fight for a chance to escape. Sonny wanted to come up with some profound words, but nothing came to mind. He wasn't really a profound person anyway. What he really wanted to carve into the wall was his true name, but even now, the paranoia stopped him. What if someone would come here one day and read it out loud? What a funny disaster that would be. Finally, he raised the kunai and carved something beneath the lines that marked the days he had spent living in the ruined cathedral. Then, Sonny turned around and walked away. There were 2 runes left on the wall behind him, one meaning sun, the other meaning loss. There were 2 things Sonny wanted to accomplish before tomorrow morning. One was in the ruins of a library that he had never finished exploring, and the other one was right here in the ruined cathedral. Returning to the grand hall with his rucksack on his shoulder, Sonny walked past the statue of the nameless goddess and dove into one of the doors leading into the temple's inner sanctum. He had never been there before, kept away by the living darkness and the black night. But now that the devil was gone, Sonny was finally going to see what was hidden inside. Walking through the rooms and corridors that the priests and priestesses had once used, he looked around and didn't notice anything of interest. Everything was pretty much destroyed and ruined, with only a few mundane things remaining untouched. There was nothing here at all. At least, that was what others would think. Sonny, however, suddenly stopped in front of a certain wall and tilted his head. There was nothing special about that wall, at least nothing that could be seen, but he could feel a heavy mass of shadows hiding behind it, as though there was a hollow space there. After searching for a while, he found a hidden lever and pressed it. Or at least he tried. The ancient mechanism had rusted through and disintegrated over 1,000 years of neglect. With a sigh, Sonny summoned the Midnight Shard, looked closer at the hollow wall, and inserted the tachi into the seam between its moving parts. Then, he unceremoniously used the unbreakable blade as a lever and pushed with all his inhuman strength. With a terrible scraping sound, a part of the wall slid away. The air rushed past Sonny, entering the dark mouth of a narrow corridor. Behind it, a set of stone stairs led down, deep down underground. With a resentful grimace, Sonny flourished the Midnight Shard to shake off the dust that clung to it, put it on his shoulder, and entered the secret passage. The hidden passage led Sonny underground, twisting and turning through the mass of stone. Despite the fact that he had been cautiously walking forward for a few minutes now, Sonny felt that he was still beneath the cathedral. In fact, by his estimation, he was approaching its center. And indeed, right beneath the spot where the statue of the goddess should have been, the narrow passage opened into a larger room. In it, a deep well leading even further down was situated, with a winding staircase spiraling down into the darkness. Sonny frowned. What is it with this place and creepy dark wells? Going further down was going to place him dangerously close to the catacombs. He knew all too well what kind of danger that would pose. The last time Sonny had ventured into the maze of ancient tunnels below the city, he barely escaped alive. After hesitating for a while, he stepped onto the staircase and began descending. Deep, ancient shadows surrounded Sonny, giving him a little comfort. At least he was among his kin. After a minute or so of walking down the stairwell, Sonny entered a large chamber that seemed to be carved into the bedrock instead of being constructed by human hands. A large door forged from black steel stood on the other side of it, illuminated by 2 burning torches. 2 thoughts entered Sonny's mind simultaneously. The first one was that the metal from which the monolithic door was made looked eerily familiar. It was the same dark, lusterless, impenetrable alloy that the Black Knight had been made of. The second thought was even more disturbing.
How come those torches are still burning?
Had they been aflame for several thousand years? Come to think of it, the torches looked very strange. They seemed to be producing light, but it was pale and ghostly. There was no heat that came with it, too. The shadows cast by the ghostly flames were the most unsettling, though. Because of the movements of the fire, they were supposed to be dancing on the floor. But instead, the shadows were absolutely motionless. It was as though the light of the torches had trapped and paralyzed them somehow. Sonny thought for a while, and then ordered his own shadow to stay back. The shadow did not protest. In fact, it was visibly relieved. Taking a few exaggerated steps back, it merged with the deep darkness at the exit of the stairwell and waited there, glancing nervously at the strange motionless shadows from time to time. Sonny cautiously approached the black door and lowered the midnight shard into a protective stance. He was ready to face any sort of danger, but nothing attacked him. A sudden chill ran through Sonny's body when he entered the circle of light cast by the two ghostly torches. But he saw no physical assailants, no sign that anything other than his own fear had caused the feeling. And yet, despite the lack of evidence, Sonny had a sense this was all too unnatural.
These torches they are definitely some sort of a protective charm. I am almost sure that their power can harm even shadows.
The question he had to ask himself, though, was this. Were the torches meant to keep something from entering the space that hid behind the black door? Or were they meant to keep something in? Either way, there was only one way to find out. What Sonny was doing seemed absolutely crazy, but in fact it was not. He had not come into this underground chamber just because of idle curiosity, or because of being blinded by greed and the prospect of finding a treasure. What led him here and pushed him to study the black door was his intuition. By now, Sonny had to admit that his intuition was more than a mere manifestation of his subconscious. It had turned out to be correct one too many times, especially ever since he had consumed the drop of ichor. After that day, he was able to sense the presence of divinity, and sometimes he was even drawn to it, like he was drawn to this cathedral and to the mysterious key that lay buried in the body of the Lord of the Dead. The two seemed connected. In fact, Sonny had encountered so many things that seemed vaguely connected to his divine aspect, and yet he couldn't ever get a clear view of the whole picture. It was infuriating, and he was determined to put the puzzle together. In his gut, Sonny felt that another piece lay beyond that door, but these vague impressions were not all his intuition was capable of. There were other aspects to it too. In fact, Sonny suspected that it had more to do with his fated attribute than it had to do with the spark of divinity. If he were to guess, he would say that after he had been changed by the ichor, that attribute was slightly enhanced, giving him the ability to sense subtle tremors that ran through the strings of fate from time to time. The strings that were, apparently, tightly wrapped around his body. The combination of the change that happened to his eyes and his close relationship with those strings gave Sonny a slight affinity to revelations and fate, similar to the one Cassia had possessed, but infinitely less potent. He couldn't get full-scale visions. He couldn't even tell why this door was calling to him, but his intuition was enough to tell him that it was important. It was strong enough to create the needling curiosity in his brain that screamed at him to open it. Stepping close to the monolithic black door, Sonny gazed at it and concluded that not even an entire army would have been able to break through this monstrous barrier. There was, however, a small keyhole hidden on its dark surface. Pulling on the string tied around his neck, Sonny took off the small metal key that hung on it and gripped it tightly in his hand. Is this the lock that fits the strange iron key he'd gotten from the Lord of the Dead? After hesitating for a few moments, He carefully inserted the key into the lock of the black door. It fit perfectly. As soon as Sonny put the key into the lock, the faint light of divinity it emanated suddenly became a little brighter. Sonny sighed, then readied himself, and turned the key. Something clicked inside the metal door, and then it silently opened. The pale light of the ghostly torches swayed as though moved by an otherworldly wind. Behind the door, a small room was carved into the rock, and in it, a corpse in a dark mantle was chained to the floor inside a circle. Sonny couldn't tell if the corpse belonged to a man or a woman because there was a strange mask covering its face. The mask was made out of black lacquered wood and carved to resemble the face of a ferocious demon. Its teeth were bared, with 4 fangs protruding from its mouth. The mask was crowned with 3 twisted horns. Inside the black chasms of its eyes, there was nothing but utter darkness. Who was this person, and why did Sonny feel so intensely connected to them? Sonny held his breath, affected by the disturbing scene in front of him. The corpse was kneeling on the floor of the small cell, its hand chained to the floor. There was a circle carved into the stone around it, with countless symbols that Sonny could not understand surrounding it. However, the circle was broken. In the thousands of years since the fall of the Dark City, the floor of the dungeon cell had cracked, with several fractures running straight through the intricate engraving. Whatever it was the circle was meant to contain had either perished or escaped a long time ago. Now, the only thing that remained was a withered corpse. Coming closer, Sonny took another look at the person who had been imprisoned and died under the ruined cathedral, in a cell situated exactly beneath the statue of the nameless goddess. Because of the dark mantle and the black lacquered mask, Sonny couldn't glean a lot of information about the corpse. It seemed to belong to a human, but other than that, everything about it was a mystery. What terrible sin had this person committed to be condemned to this awful death? Strangely, Sonny's intuition was silent. It was as though there was nothing in front of him at all. To his sixth sense, the prisoner of the underground cell appeared as an empty space. Weird. This person had to either have been hated or feared a lot to be locked behind all these barriers. Surely, finding such a creature would affect my fate. Why don't I feel anything then? With a tense frown, he took a deep breath and carefully stepped inside the circle. It was then that Sonny noticed a chaotic mess of runes drawn on the floor near the prisoner's left hand. The sight of them almost sent him into a seizure. Staggering away, Sonny fell to his knees and threw up. Sonny took a deep breath, regaining control of his body.
Damn it!
Those runes. Those were the same runes the spell used to describe the mysterious unknown. Only here, the intensity of the terrible effect they had on the mind of anyone who saw them was much, much stronger.
What the hell was that?
Wiping his mouth, Sonny grimaced and glanced at the masked corpse with a bit of resentment. Then, he picked himself off the floor, swallowed the lump in his throat, and forced himself to look at the terrible runes once again. Immediately, Sonny felt a splitting headache and a sickening, terrible sensation spreading through his mind. It was as though all his thoughts and memories were being torn and twisted. But despite all of it, Sonny persevered and kept staring at the final message that the prisoner had left behind. He knew he couldn't read the runes. He didn't know that particular language, and the spell either was forbidden, incapable, or unwilling to translate them. But Sonny felt compelled to try. For these markings to have such a profound effect on his body, they must be important. Why else would he recoil from them? Something or someone didn't want Sonny to know what they said, and that only made him more determined to white-knuckle through the panic and nausea. Fighting through the intense pain, Sonny drug his gaze across the runes slowly and deliberately. He found if he focused on small fragments at a time, the pain wasn't so strong. So he studied them, trying to piece them together in his mind without seeing them as a whole in the real world. His eyes widened in a moment of realization. Right below the chaotic mess of these etchings, a line of text was written in the script he was familiar with, the usual runic language that the spell always used. The nightmare spell did not provide any translation. Luckily, Sonny had studied these runes and knew enough about them to understand what was written himself. The last thing the person imprisoned under the cathedral wrote before succumbing to death made him shudder. Scratched into the stone was a sort of prayer. Hail Weaver, demon of fate, firstborn of the unknown. Sonny stared at the runes until he was on the verge of losing consciousness. Only then did he turn away and close his eyes. The nauseating dissonance of the terrible runes stayed carved into his mind. Only after several minutes passed did it fade a little, allowing him to breathe again. So, the mysterious weaver whose forbidden language he had inherited was, in fact, associated with fate, just like Sonny himself. Could this really be a coincidence? That's fated for you, I guess. The word he translated as demon wasn't the one used to describe nightmare creatures of the third rank, but a different one. Perhaps calling it a spirit or a daemon would have been more suitable. A mortal, but powerful and ominous deity. One different from gods, but sharing the same nature. However, Sonny wasn't that versed in mystical terminology. All he knew was that the runic language was incredibly rich in words describing all types of monsters and creatures, while the human language wasn't. Hence, demon was fine with him. Apart from the tantalizing revelation about the mysterious weaver, he had noticed one other important thing by forcing himself to study the runes. Initially, Sonny had thought that there was a single entity that the spell refused to call by its name and simply described as unknown, leading him to refer to this being as the unknown. Sonny wasn't sure whether the unknown was a race of beings, a single entity, or a force of nature. But now, he realized that there were actually two types of forbidden runes and two separate things that the spell was unable or unwilling to translate. One was the same as those used in the description of the drop of ichor, which stated that the vile thieving bird was hated both by the gods and by the unknown. It was also said that the reflection of the unknown stayed forever frozen in the depths of Weaver's pupils, and that just looking at it drove the thieving bird mad. The other was the same as those used in the description of the Stone Saint, which was created by the last child of the unknown. It was this second unknown that was referred to here by the dead prisoner, who had called Weaver the firstborn of the unknown. Sonny struggled to make sense of this revelation. What the hell does all of this supposed to mean? His suspicion that Weaver had something to do with the creation of the nightmare spell only grew stronger after learning that he, she, it, they had something to do with the domain of fate. After all, the spell seemed to be weaved out of numerous strings of fate, and there was this being called Weaver who had the blood of gods in their veins, but was also somehow connected to the unknown. Feeling his headache only growing stronger, Sonny winced and shook his head. Later. I will think about it later. There would be time to ponder about all this later, unless, of course, he dies trying to escape the Forgotten Shore. Turning back to the chained corpse, Sonny cautiously avoided looking at the dangerous runes and kneeled in front of it. He wanted to know what was hiding behind the mask. He reached out and laid a hand on it. As soon as he touched the corpse, it suddenly shattered and fell apart, turning into dust right in front of his eyes. Even its dark mantle rotted and disappeared, as though the thousands of years that had passed since the fall of the Dark City and the destruction of the cathedral finally caught up with it. Soon, all that was left was a pile of dust, and the lacquered mask laying on top of it, its black surface glinting slightly in the pale light of the ghostly torches. Why had the mask survived, and what could it do? Sonny looked at the black mask and the darkness hiding in its eyes. Its features were not as much contorted as fearsome by nature. It was simultaneously fearsome and somber, bestial and regal, as though existing at the border of all things. But most of all, the striking mask radiated a sense of mystery. The vicious fangs, the twisting horns, the black lacquered wood of it all. Once again, his intuition was silent. There was nothing he felt toward the black mask, as though it didn't even exist. How strange. Sonny waited for a few moments, then picked up the mask and brought it to his face to take a closer look at it. But just a moment after his fingers touched the sleek surface of the polished wood, the mask suddenly disintegrated into a swarm of countless white sparks. Acting like water, the stream of light flowed toward Sonny's chest and entered his body, disappearing into the dark depths of his shadow core. The voice of the spell thundered suddenly, louder than it had ever been before.
You have received a memory.
Sonny remained motionless for a few seconds, thinking about what just happened. By now, he knew that some memories could exist outside of the soul cores, just like how shard memories did. Was the black mask one of them? He couldn't explain why, but he didn't feel like this mask was one of them.
Why am I even guessing? Let's just take a look.
The reason he was lingering was because of the magnitude of the situation. Sonny didn't know anything about the mysterious mask, but he believed that this relic of the past was truly unusual. The circumstances that had led to its discovery were too extraordinary, and the place it was hidden in was too uncanny to think otherwise. So he was understandably apprehensive. With a bit of tension, Sonny dove into his soul sea and looked up at the spheres of light floating around the black sun of the shadow core. There was a new one there, which seemed to be much brighter than the rest. Summoning it down, he soon found himself looking into the eyes of the dark mask that hovered in front of him. It was as though he was facing an invisible person wearing it. Shifting uncomfortably, Sonny lowered his gaze a little and looked beneath the black lacquered wood. A moment later, he had to suppress the involuntary desire to cover his eyes with a hand. Inside the black mask, 7 radiant embers were burning with such intensity that it almost blinded him. All around them, incalculable ethereal strings were weaved into a pattern so vast and intricate that it almost seemed boundless.
7 anchors?
Stunned by the visage of the mask's spellweave, Sonny hesitated for a bit and summoned the runes that described it. What he saw made him take a step back and gasp.
Oh.
Memory, Weaver's Mask. Memory rank, Divine. Memory tier, 7. Memory type, Tool.
Sonny wasn't surprised this was a divine memory, considering its apparent tie to the gods, but 7th tier. He blinked in shock.
Holy hell!
Words weren't enough to describe his astonishment. A memory this powerful was insanely rare, and he simply found it here. Sonny shook his head. No, he was discounting himself. He had to fight the Corpse Eater, rely on his enhanced sight, and put together the pieces of a puzzle. There was nothing simple about him getting his hands on the Weaver's Mask. Still, Tier 7. Sonny returned his attention to the runes, curious to see what amazing abilities lay in such a powerful memory. Memory description. Weaver believed that knowledge was the origin of power, and so always hid behind numerous lies, wearing them as a mantle. No one knew Weaver's thoughts, Weaver's face, and Weaver's heart. Even the gods could not see what hid behind the mask. Memory enchantments. Mantle of lies. Simple trick. Sunny squinted. There was a third enchantment, but rather than show runes, the spell simply showed a series of question marks. Overall, Sunny was surprised to see that the mask only had 3 enchantments. Sunny expected such a powerful memory to have dozens of them. Judging by how boundless and insanely complicated the weave of it was, there had to be that much at least. What 3 enchantments required a myriad of diamond strings to support them? And why was one obfuscated? Turning back to the runes, he concentrated on the enchantments and read further. Enchantment, Mantle of Lies. Enchantment description. Hides the identity of its master. That description sounded very simple. In fact, it was painfully obvious. Of course a mask would hide the identity of the wearer. But Sunny was not going to be deceived by the simple language. Looking at the spell weave of the black mask, Sunny could tell that this enchantment was anything but basic. It was so vast and powerful that his mind was failing to even comprehend the scale of it. The enchantment was indeed designed to protect the identity of the person wearing the mask from prying eyes, but what it actually meant was that any form of detection was powerless against it, and Sunny suspected that any was not a figure of speech in this case, but simply a statement of fact. For example, Cassia's aspect ability, which allowed her to see a person's attributes, would not work on someone wearing the mask. There were countless similar abilities among the awakened, none of which would work either.
I guess that explains why my intuition was silent about the prisoner and the mask itself. Whatever kind of fate-related sixth sense I have is also countered by that thing.
Even more terrifying was the fact that the enchantment was not aimed at just the awakened. The description of the Weaver's mask stated that even the gods could not see through it. Nothing could penetrate the barriers of the Mantle of Lies, not even the sight of a god. Sunny gulped. Scary. But then, this incredible and frightening enchantment did not even take up 1/10 of the volume of the ethereal diamond strings hiding beneath the surface of the black lacquered mask. Sunny turned his attention to the enchantment that the runes refused to name. Enchantment description. None. Sunny frowned, but he wasn't surprised. The spell wouldn't even tell him the enchantment's name. Of course it'd mask its abilities. However, Sunny could tell that it had something to do with sight just by looking at the weave. He could also tell that it was not a passive enchantment, but an active one, meaning that currently he could not access it. Usually, that would mean that the enchantment could become available to him once he became a true awakened. But in this case, the amount of soul essence required to keep the enchantment activated for more than a fraction of a second was so vast that no awakened would have been able to. Maybe a saint could pull off supporting the thirst of this demanding and mysterious enchantment. Sunny was not sure that he wanted to try, even if he had the ability. The things Weaver saw were capable of driving unholy creatures insane, so it was wise to avoid going anywhere near that enchantment in the future. Most likely. The bulk of the spell weave of Weaver's mask, however, was dedicated to the third enchantment, one that was called a simple trick. Judging by the mind-boggling complexity of the pattern that made it possible, that trick of Weaver's was anything but simple, though. It was the most bizarre, intricate, and ingenious thing that Sunny had ever seen. Curious, he glanced at the description and froze. His eyes opened wide. the runes gleaming in the air read,
Enchantment, simple trick. Enchantment description. Reverses the effect of one's flaw.
Sonny remained silent for a long time, staring at the black mask. The tranquil sea of his soul was still and silent, not at all like the storm that was currently raging in his heart. After a while, he thought,
That Weaver was one sly guy. Girl? Person? Being? The fact that I don't even know which only serves to prove the point. And I thought I was good at deceit and manipulation.
how devious one must be to not let the gods, even the nightmare spell, know anything about them. But it was fitting in a strange kind of way. If Weaver's domain was that of fate, there was no other way. Fate was a terrifying but subtle tool. Manipulating it to your advantage required a very special kind of genius, one that was directly opposite to any kind of directness, straightforwardness, and brutal power. However, if given the choice, Sonny would have preferred to face War God in battle than to make someone like Weaver his enemy. Masterful liars were far more dangerous than deadly warriors. He knew it better than most. Sonny closed his eyes and breathed out, exiting the Sea of Soul. Sonny stood alone in the dark, dank cell and summoned the Weaver's mask. The cool wooden surface of the mask appeared on his face, held in place by some invisible force. Immediately, his vision changed slightly. Everything became sharper, clearer, and more vivid. Sonny could feel the mask reaching into his eyes and connecting to something, the strange legacy he had inherited by consuming the drop of Weaver's blood. He sensed his intuition becoming more potent too. It was as though he could almost see the mysterious strings of fate that span across the entire world. Almost. Glancing at the pile of dust that remained of the prisoner, Sonny frowned slightly. The identity of the person who had been wearing the Weaver's mask remained a secret. Just who had this corpse belonged to, and how had they ended up chained to the floor in a hidden dungeon cell beneath the majestic cathedral? It did cross Sonny's mind that this was Weaver themselves, but Sonny dismissed that theory immediately. From everything he knew about the original master of the mask, the power of that creature was just below that of the gods, and that of the unknown, perhaps. If Weaver appeared on the Forgotten Shore, the whole Dark City would have been wiped out of existence before any harm was done to them. So who could have been wearing Weaver's mask? Some powerful carrier of the nightmare spell that had received it as a memory, just as Sonny did? If Weaver was really a demon, which was a strange kind of lesser deity, was there a cult dedicated to them? Had there been priests and followers of Weaver? The message the prisoner had left behind sounded awfully close to a prayer. Had that person been deemed a heretic and condemned to this place for that reason? Sonny sighed. The truth was this person's identity would likely never be known. Had they sacrificed themselves for the Weaver? For something in this chamber? Would it be a comfort to them that their identity was forgotten? Or a tragedy? Hesitating for a bit, he turned away and left the somber dungeon cell behind. He only had this one day to finish all the things he had left undone in the Dark City. There was no time for fruitless pondering. Once outside, Sonny walked over to the place where he had left his shadow and took a look at himself through its eyes. What he saw made him blink a couple of times. Huh? The black lacquered mask sat snugly on his face, hiding his features. He couldn't even see his eyes, which were drowned in darkness. What's more, even his height was somehow unclear. Sonny didn't actually become taller, but from the side, it looked as though he did. Sort of. 1 second he looked larger, but if the shadow turned its head, he suddenly seemed shorter. If the shadow maintained its line of sight for too long, his shape seemed to waver. It was sort of similar to how people's faces changed when lighted from different directions. In any case, he couldn't tell for sure how tall the person facing the shadow was. Sonny smirked and thought, this really is the perfect disguise. It was not that Sonny became completely unrecognizable, though. He would still have to be careful to hide the context clues about himself while wearing the mask. Mundane things like the way he walked, his usual mannerisms, and other subtle but unique details of his behavior could still betray his identity despite the fact that it was masked from all natural means of detection. To truly make himself appear as something else, Sonny would have to put on a performance. Good thing he was practicing the shadow dance then. Was it not designed to fully imitate someone else's battle style and physicality? He thought to himself.
Well, that worked out perfectly.
Finally, the moment he had been dreading came. It was time to test if the simple trick was truly capable of turning his flaw upside down. What would it mean for his inability to lie to be reversed? Would his lies become true? That would be an insane amount of power. Sonny knew he couldn't get that lucky, but hopefully the mask at least let him lie again. Needless to say, Sonny was nervous. His lips became dry, and he unconsciously tried to lick them. But now there was a mask on his face, so he couldn't. That bad habit of his had to be put to rest, apparently. Opening his mouth, Sonny said out loud,
I am very tall.
In the process, he grimaced, expecting the familiar pain to invade his mind. He expected the truth to come tumbling from his lips uncontrollably. But there was silence. Sonny froze, blinked a couple of times, and waited. Still, nothing happened. Beneath the mask, a wide grin appeared on his face.
I am not only tall but also exquisitely handsome. But that is not all. I am incredibly honest and nice, too. Every girl I meet immediately falls in love with me. Boys, too. That's just how lovable, handsome, nice, and tall I am. Everything I've just said is absolutely true.
His mind was peaceful and quiet. There was no pain, no pressure. In fact, Sonny felt great. His heart leaped. He was overjoyed to be done with this burden of honesty. Feeling an almost overwhelming desire to continue spouting lies, he laughed in exhilaration.
Amazing! This can be very useful.
But then, a tremendous explosion of pain suddenly threw him to the ground. With a startled yelp,
Ah!
Sonny grasped his head and then groaned through gritted teeth, feeling as though it was about to burst. Sonny let out a pained groan.
Ah!
Where was this coming from? The ability to lie would indeed be very useful, which meant that by stating that fact he would be telling the truth, and the Weaver's mask did not remove his flaw, just reversed it. So, it seemed like while wearing it, Sonny could not tell even a word of truth. That seemed like the right conclusion to make, but he needed to test it to be absolutely sure. With a doomed sigh, Sonny waited for a moment, then said,
My name is Sonny.
A moment later, another pained scream resounded in the darkness of the underground chamber.
Ah!
Sonny clutched the side of his head. He had thought his issues with the flaw were finally behind him, but now he had a whole new set of concerns. He could either only lie or only tell the truth, depending on whether he wore the mask. Would he ever be free of this curse and able to speak like normal? Sometime later, Sonny emerged from the ruins of the cathedral with a rucksack on his shoulder, took one last look back, and left. Whatever his future was going to be, he doubted that he would come back here anytime soon. It was a bittersweet goodbye. Sonny kept his guard up, cautiously walking through the familiar streets of the Dark City, where he knew every turn and every piece of rubble. In this district of it, at least. Many things must have changed in the months he had been away traveling through the labyrinth. The nightmare creatures he knew, and more importantly, knew how to avoid, might have wandered away or perished, and new horrors might have taken their place. He had to stay prudent and careful. But still, his next and final goal was not that far away. As he sneaked toward it, Sonny thought about the Weaver's mask and the ways it could change his life. At first, he thought about simply never taking it off and walking around while delivering a deluge of lies. This way, he would be safe from revealing his most guarded secret and becoming someone's slave at least. But after considering this seriously, he came to the conclusion that there would be situations that called for him to lie, and those that called for him to be honest. Currently, he thought the latter was more apt. First of all, one couldn't be a part of any collective while lying all the time. Sonny had an unpleasant experience of being expelled from various groups for various reasons, and not being sincere and honest was one of the surest ways to make people want to avoid you at all costs. No one was able to survive alone in the dream realm. Not in a way that a person would want to live anyway. Sonny knew a lot about this side of things, too. Most importantly, he was not going to be able to keep this lying for long anyway, not when dealing with people who already knew him. Kai and Cassia would notice the strange effect of the mask immediately. Kai because of his ability to sense lies, Cassia because her ability to see attributes would suddenly stop working. The situation may not be as immediately apparent to the others, but they would catch on that something strange was going on with him pretty quickly. The drastic change in his behavior would simply be too noticeable, especially Nephis, who knew him so well. After that, they would inevitably have a lot of questions, and answering those questions solely with lies would put him in more danger than he was already in. So, sadly, Weaver's mask was not a panacea to Sonny's current situation. At best, it would be able to help him avoid certain predicaments if used sparingly, but really, he didn't want anyone to know that he had that memory at all. Sonny had to think of the future. If he was lucky enough to survive the fall of the Bright Castle and return to the real world, that was where the Black Mask could create miracles for him. It would allow him to have a hidden persona that was in no way connected to an awakened named Sunless, and as such, allow him to do and achieve things that would have been impossible or too dangerous to try as himself. To that effect, no one could know that the strange black wooden mask was connected to him, not even people whom he trusted, at least as much as Sonny could trust anyone, but for his own good and theirs. Sonny sighed.
It is such a pity, though.
It was. Sonny imagined Castor's face if he were to ever learn about what type of treasure Sonny had somehow found this time. It was tempting enough for Sonny to consider changing his plans. As Sonny thought about Castor, his face darkened. He had not forgotten about the promise Nephis had made him at the start of their journey to the Hollow Mountains. Tomorrow, he was finally going to learn about the Proud Legacy and figure out what exactly the relationship between Changing Star and him was. He'd also learn how great the chances were that Sonny would have to face Castor in battle. Despite all his dislike for the handsome scion of the Lee family, Sonny was reluctant to actually fight him. No matter how much progress Sonny had made to get ready for the bloody conclusion of this disastrous chapter of his life, Castor was still not someone to be taken lightly. He was a tremendously deadly opponent just based on what Sonny knew about him, and there were secrets that the Legacy had been keeping as well. Sonny remembered the hourglass he'd spied around Castor's neck during the fight with the Spire Messenger.
That charm of his, what does it do?
Sonny was certain that he could defeat Castor if push came to shove, but the cost he would have to pay for that victory would be heavy, perhaps much more heavy than he was willing to pay. Suddenly uneasy, Sonny silently shook his head and continued on his way. As the sun began to roll toward the western horizon, he approached his goal, the ruins of an ancient library that stood lonesomely among the decimated buildings. Back near the end of his lonely months of hunting monsters on the streets of the Dark City, Sonny had begun exploring this ruin for bits of information about the history of the Forgotten Shore. Because of his chance encounter with the Stone Saint, and then with Kai, which led to him abandoning the ruins for a long expedition into the labyrinth, he had never finished this project. That didn't sit well with Sonny. He wasn't going to make up for months of forsaken exploration in one night. He knew that. Still, he didn't feel comfortable abandoning his curiosity so completely. There was this one vast mosaic in particular that Sonny was interested in. It sprawled across the entire floor of the library's main hall and was mostly covered by rubble. In the past, Sonny was not strong enough to move the rubble out of the way. He had been hoping to make the Stone Saint do it for him, but sadly the Echo was currently slumbering in the depths of his shadow core, evolving into whatever it was she was going to turn into. Just to be sure, he checked one more time to see if the mysterious process was still going, and sighed in disappointment. Luckily, he had grown much stronger himself during these months. Sonny was pretty sure that now he would be able to clear the mosaic with his own 2 hands. It was just going to be a lot of work. Sending his shadow into the library to make sure that no abomination had made its nest there during his absence, Sonny entered its cool shadow of the ruin and sighed.
Better get started.
Soon, the scraping sound of heavy boulders being moved could be heard under the partially collapsed roof of the ancient building. Sonny didn't know at the time that the answers to so many of his questions would be answered if he was able to put the pieces of this puzzle back into place. But as the mural began to take shape, the truth was ready to be revealed.